All right. Welcome, everybody. Good evening to you. My name is Omari Salisbury, and I'm joined by
Enrique Cerna. And I'm very pleased to be here with you, Omari, and all those joining us this evening for a very important conversation.
Very important conversation it is. Tonight, we're having a gun violence roundtable discussion, 3 hours long. And something like this could actually go on for much longer than that, where we hope to cover a lot of different perspectives, from talking to victims and victim families, to understanding the current state of gun violence in our city, as well as, what we can do moving forward.
That, I think, is the most important thing. What can we do? What can we change? Very important.
Right. And just an overview here before we get going. We've got from in the first hour, where we're going to be hearing from Davida Briscoe, from Alicia Dasa, from Donita Sinclair Martin, from Yona Sifu. And then in the second hour, we'll have Seattle Police Chief Adrian Diaz, Willard Jimerson Jr. from United Better Thinking, Sean Goode from Choose 180, Dre Franklin from B.U.I.L.D, as well as Rico Bimbury of Bimbury Consulting Services. After that, we're going to talk some upstream. We'll be talking to my brother, Chukundi Salisbury, 100 Black Parents. And then also in the third hour, Davida Briscoe will be joining us again, as well as Devon Adams from Community Justice. So, we've got a fairly packed lineup here. Before I get into the first hour, and I wanted to actually play a clip here that was from King 5 a few days ago. And it was really like the impetus. We talk about gun violence in Seattle all the time on the Morning Update show. It's something, of course, being from the community is something that's always impacting us. But when I saw this news report that 70 shots were fired near this elementary school, that was kind of like the impetus of being like, man, we have to do something about this. Let's get everybody together. I'm going to play this clip.
At least 2 people are dead this morning, and police are still investigating what were multiple violent events from yesterday. They think they could be connected as well. King Guy's Kara Alfallen is live in Seattle this morning with more on what happened. Kara, where are you, and how did this all start?
Yeah, good morning. So we're actually north from where this happened, but this violence actually started south of Emerson Elementary. So around 4 o'clock yesterday, gunshots rang throughout this neighborhood. Police say at least 70 rounds were fired. This sent at least 5 people to the hospital. So detectives with the GAIN unit are now investigating this shooting. And then about 4 hours later, gunshots were fired on Seward Park Avenue South. So when police got to the scene, they found a man at the Atlantic City boat ramp had been shot. He died on the scene. Witnesses say a man left in a hurry driving a gray car, which ended up hitting a pedestrian at Rainier Avenue South and Martin Luther King Jr. Way South. So the pedestrian was killed. and the driver left the scene. Harborview Medical Center staff say someone from that car ended up in their care, along with someone else, both who claimed gunshot wounds they got from the Atlantic City boat ramp scene. So detectives are still just trying to piece together how these events are connected. They're asking if you have any information at all that you come forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's 70 bullets right there at one location.
Right. Near a school. That's wrong.
Yeah, and you know, it's something that we've been doing. We'll get into it more in the show. But like, you know, for somebody like me, this is generational violence here in Seattle. I remember Garfield High School, being in high school there, my senior year, classmates being murdered. And so we really want to, you know, see how we can have a conversation here that's going to enlighten and uplift. As we say, we're going to get the show on the road. And so I'll catch you at the bottom of this hour, Enrique. And right now, though, I'd like to bring in Donita Briscoe. Donita there? There we go.
Oh, we got, no, that's Donita. I see Donita already.
You know, I gotta, what you call,
y'all getting our names mixed up.
Yeah, I'm doing the most. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah, so wanted to reach out to you first here. You know, in this first hour, it's really about, you know, victims and survivors as well as advocates. And so wanted to bring you in here, Davida. You are let me get it right, the director of the Black Women's Coalition to End Violence. Mm-hmm. And you know, you have man, what's really you would just say a very painful story. When we talk about it, you know, not only basically the love of your life murdered, your son murdered, and your brother murdered. And so the impacts around violence has been, you know, it's kind of holistic all the way around you. And instead of kind of running away from things, you've taken all of this pain and you've channeled it into being a resource for other people in the community. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your journey?
It's been a tough journey for one, but thank you for having me under such horrible circumstances. I want to send out my love and condolences to all the families that have been impacted. When you hear 70 shots and 2 people murdered on one night, you know, and I get called into another meeting the next morning, you know, it's hard to talk about money and budgets, you know, when you know that there are 2 mothers that are crying because they lost their child. So, and actually that date, October 3rd, is the day that my son was shot. So when I seen that date on there, it brought back a lot of painful memories. My first devastation that I experienced was the love of my life. His name was Hadis Prater. We called him Jaime. He was killed in 2001. He was murdered. And I mean, I was devastated. I was shocked, you know, burying him and having to, that tragedy that I suffered. I don't know if I've ever recovered from that. I mean, it was devastating to me. And then I fast forward to 2010, you know, I learned that my son was shot, and I learned that my son was shot the same week that my twin brother was sentenced to 48 years in prison. So not only was I suffering, I feel like I suffered 2 losses of the womb. I suffered the loss of the person that I had shared the womb with, and I lost the person who I birthed out of my womb, which was my son. He was shot during a brawl with some other young men that they had an altercation with. A fight broke out, then guns broke out, and it kind of was like a shootout, I guess. And the young man who shot my son didn't intend to shoot him. He actually felt that he was trying to protect him, and he shot him unintentionally. He, you know, it took a few days, and I finally just, you know, released him off of life support. And that was one of the hardest things. That was another tragedy. I did a lot of anti-violence work after his death, and you know, it just, and then fast forward into 2016, my brother is released from prison, and then he's killed by the police. So yeah, then I started doing police accountability, police reform. And I think one of my ways of responding to trauma is to to find the solutions and to try to address them. And so I'm a warrior. There's a warrior side of me. There's a fighter in me that's saying I'm just not just going to take it. I'm going to figure out a way, to combat some of this stuff so that I don't have to see another mother in the type of pain that I experienced. So anyway, ask me all the questions.
No, and actually we've got some photos here. They're playing early on. You can hear me, Davida?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Now we're playing some. I think we're playing some photos here on screen. It kind of goes through this chronological order of you've explained around tragedies in your life, especially around violence here. So you're working now on a lot of different things. People in the community know you as, like, informally, you're somebody who just shows up. You know what I'm saying? around these issues, you're somebody who shows up. But also now with the Black Women's Coalition to End Violence, can you tell us a little bit about that? And what keeps you going forward in this space?
Well, really, what keeps me going forward is my faith. I can't say enough about, I don't think any one person who has suffered this much loss could just get up and just keep going. It has to be, some higher power that I submit to. So I have to say that first. It's definitely my faith. The Black Women's Coalition to End Violence is really, I kind of saw myself in spaces where I was telling my story a lot and really, and for the most part, feeling like I was amplifying other communities' perspectives of how to address these issues, and not really the perspective of Black mothers who are suffering so much of the tragedies and the losses. I was seeing where we weren't having a voice and where we didn't have power. I see, like, your mom, for instance, Mother Walden, with the Silent War campaign, who's been for decades, in the trenches and really being siloed. I've seen a lot of mothers where we're trying to parent beyond the grave and trying to honor and to uplift the respect for our children, but we're doing that siloed and disconnected from one another. So what I decided to do was to do a united front of Black women who are the matriarchs of the community. I mean, you got people. We've been having some of our Mary Flowers going inside the prisons, and Janet Preston. These are women that have been carrying and laboring in these communities for decades. And yet, when there's a policy decision, or when there's a tragedy, or when money is coming through, nobody's asking the mothers anything. Nobody's asking the Black women, what are our decisions? Or there's no accountability to Black women. And so that's, I wanted us, number one, to be connected. I wanted us to build relationships, and I wanted us to have a united front. So when immediately your mother was the first person I called, was like, Mother Walden. And she was like, well, I've been doing this data, and I've been trying to get the Silent War campaign, and nobody comes to help me. And I was just like, well, wait a minute, let's do something, and let's bring some other powerful Black women behind you, and let's push some of these things that you have been trying to address for all these years, but let's do it together. And let's do it, across generations too. So we'll get some of the younger young women. Right now, all of my friends that I grew up with, like Donita and all of us, I knew Donita over 27 years ago. Donita was actually best friends with Jaime, my boyfriend. So we're all burying our kids right now. We were burying our babies' dads, and now we're burying our kids. And I have over 8. I can't even tell you how many friends I have that have lost their children, their daughters and sons. And if they have, some of them have survived, some of them didn't make it. But it's to the point now where it's Black male genocide. It's genocide. And so just like if you see in Hotel Rwanda, when they were slaughtering the Hutus and the Tutsi tribes were slaughtering each other, that is exactly what I'm seeing right here in America, is that this is genocide. And so there's no way I can sit here and not try to address it, and not try to pull our young people out of the fire, or out of the danger that we're seeing and the injustices that we're seeing in our communities. No other race of people would tolerate this type of death. It should not be tolerated. And so anyway, so yeah, it's
It's I mean, it's powerful what you're saying, and actually, I'm glad that you're joining us again in the third hour when we talk about solutions. Because when I've talked to you before, I know from just from the parent in the home, there's a lot of advice that you give, but then also I see here that you guys are organizing on a higher level, on a policy level as well. Before I end this segment here with you, is there any kind of advice that because we have parents who are suffering these losses, like you said, all the time. What's some advice that you might be able to give
To parents or to the community?
To parents.
To parents that may be concerned, like even some of the women that have joined the coalition are women who are concerned about their sons. And that's one of the things that I keep trying to tell people is that we're just not afraid of the police killing our sons. We're also afraid of putting our kids on the bus and for them not getting shot by one of their own peers. And so one of the things that I do is that, I'm a non-negotiable, I'm an old school parent. I do room checks. If you live here, I'm checking everything in this room. I'm checking backpacks. I'm checking all that. I'm checking who your friends are. Unprotected social interaction is one of the contributing factors in my son's death. My son knew that there were some people he would not bring around me, and he didn't bring them around me because I asked questions. I asked, who are you? Who is your mom? What school do you go to? I'm asking all of those type of questions. And this kid who shot my son was a kid I had never met. But yet people say they were best friends. They were homies. They were close. But I did not know this kid. I had never seen him before a day of my life. And so unprotected social interaction is the times that your kids are away from you. When they are away from you, who are they with? And I am constantly, I'm telling you, my kids don't spend the night at everybody's house. They don't go everywhere. And so, and right now we got a different type of generation where parents are giving kids guns or smoking weed with the kids and saying it's okay as long as you do it at home. I can't tell you how to parent, but I can tell you, that if you're passing on harmful behaviors and habits, you might want to rethink that. How are you encouraging your children? And again, I'm not trying to be your friend. I'm trying to save your life. So, I'm just one of them parents that, I don't have to be your friend. We can be friends later, as long as I can save your life. But anyway, that's about the best advice I can give.
You sound like my mama. I couldn't get anything past her. My mom was there. Hey, we gotta let you go, Davida, but we're gonna catch you in hour number 3. We'll take a short break right now. When we come back, we'll have Alicia Dasa.
Okay.
All right, welcome back to Community Voices Gun Violence Roundtable. My name is Omari Salisbury, and joined now by Alicia Dasa. How are you?
Hey, hi. It's good to be here.
Man, thank you so much for taking time and also, sharing with us. When we talk about community members that have experienced loss, it's always a difficult and emotional conversation. So I want to say thank you. But before I jump into it, and we talked about this before because some of these news clips sometimes can trigger people, and so we talked about before that we were going to play this. There's a clip here where it's coverage after your son was killed. This is King 5 right here, and then we'll talk about this.
At least 2 people are dead this.
We love you all.
Alicia Dasa Holland.
We love you.
Is just beginning to mourn the loss of her son Connor, finding compassion among her grief.
Whoever did this to my son, that baby needed a hug. That baby needed more love in their life.
Seattle police don't know who shot at the car 18-year-old Connor was in Sunday night. He was hit by a bullet and would later die at Harborview Medical Center. Police are now asking for the community's help, a community that's hurting.
And we have to figure out how to make sure every kid in this community and every community is loved, that they get enough love.
And this is why one of the reasons we're here today is to make sure that his legacy is not marred. We're not going to move on. We're going to talk about all of the greatness that Connor is and was, and we got to make sure that his name is not dragged through the mud like this was just some kind of gang-related, gangland shooting.
At a time where large gatherings are discouraged, the death of the Rainier Beach teen drew such a crowd that police shut down 51st for blocks. Not concerned with the size of the crowd, instead letting the vigil take place.
Connor would not want us to be silent. He would not want us to be sad.
Connor was the captain of his football team, his senior class president, and had just recently committed to the University of Washington.
There are no words for the pain we feel. There are no words for the anger that we feel.
As police work to catch her son's killer, this mom doesn't want her pain to turn to anger or even fear.
I was never afraid in this neighborhood. Never. And I will not be afraid moving forward.
In Seattle, Sebastian Robertson, King 5 News.
Yeah, Alicia. You know, there's the death, the murder of your son. It also impacted us. You know, my son, little O, was very good friends with your son, with Connor. And before I jump into discussion with you, I remember my approach on a lot of what's happening out here is that, you know, like a lot of people, oh, my prayers go out to them. I'm sorry to hear that. Prayers go out. But it was when Omari was so impacted by Connor's murder, and it, you know, this thick skin that it built up around me started to come down. I wanted to play a clip from the morning show the next day after we heard about the murder.
I want to welcome my brother Willard Jimerson.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you for allowing me to be on this wonderful platform.
So, man, I'll be honest with you, Willard. You know, when we talk about this conversation around youth violence, in particular, the murder on Sunday, I got to thinking that, like, man, I'm real ashamed of a few things. You know, I'm ashamed of the fact that people have been dying, and I've kind of somewhat been indifferent. Like, man, that's too bad. You know, prayers to the family. We got to do better as a community. But I'm ashamed of this murder because my son, Omari, was good friends with Connor. So now it's impacting me. But in impacting me, I thought about, what about all these other young people who have died, who I was like, man, hope they be all right. Hope the family's good. You know what I'm saying? I kind of feel ashamed of that.
You know,
Yeah, we talked fairly soon after I watched you talk that morning, and I told you I was feeling the same way. You know, the night that Connor was shot, I didn't even get out of bed initially. Someone had to come and get me up because we hear gunshots all the time, and I had become so immune to the sound that I didn't even think for 1 second that it would be affecting us. We've lived in Rainier Beach since 2008, and, you know, our kids grow up there. We have a 9-year-old who's growing up there now. And since Connor's death, our family and our friends, our close friends, have been affected. Christopher DeAndre Roberts was killed. My son's uncle, and also went to high school or middle school with our oldest son. Adrian Webb, whose mom we've been friends with since high school, and Connor was friends with Adrian. Jamez Johnson. I mean, the list goes on. And these are since Connor. You know, I'm tired of funerals. I'm tired of balloon releases for birthdays. I don't know what's happening right now. I don't remember a time where it was this bad for for a while. 2010, I think, was the last time I remember hearing gunshots incessantly. But I work for public health. I feel like we have a job to do. And I feel like right now, as a community and as parents, and I'm just at a loss. I'm at a loss for where we are, what we can do. It's so overwhelming in the last few months. You know, Connor was killed on Mother's Day. We got to be with our boy. Most people don't get that. Jimmy and I were with him right after it happened. That is not something I wish on my worst enemy. That's not something that you recover from easily or ever. I'm not really sure. What I know is Connor's gone. And we're here.
Right. You know, in that news clip that we played there from King 5, you said that whoever did this to your baby needed a hug. What do you mean by that?
I think that kids right now are disconnected in some way from feeling empathy for other people, from feeling important. You know, kids who feel important or people who feel important, they don't take other people's gifts away. You can't take someone's life if you feel valued and important. I don't see how that can happen. And so if kids are feeling supported and loved, and families are feeling supported so they can be the best that they can be, parents to their kids, I think that changes the dynamic. I think it changes the respect that people have for human life. I think it changes the respect that people have for community. If you find ownership in your community and you find, you know, even if you're not feeling safe in one place, you know that there's all these other folks that have your back. That changes something for kids. That changes something for people in general. It gives you that power and that voice back that allows you to do positive things and allows you to share in joy and in success instead of going the other way.
Right. But before we'll let you go here, I've actually got some pictures that we'll put up of Connor. What do you want our audience to know about your son?
Connor was the best brother, big brother and little brother. He was a freshman at the University of Washington. He was studying to be a lawyer for social justice and equity. He loved Rainier Beach. He grew up here. This is where he wanted to be. This is where he wanted to come back to and serve the community as an adult. He had very different ideas about how the world should work. And he wanted to share that with everybody. He thought they should all think that way. So what do I want people to know? Connor won't be forgotten. We won't allow that to happen. Connor's legacy will move on with his siblings and with us and his friends. And we're here, we're in it. And we want to do everything we can to make sure that other families don't continue to feel the way we feel. And I guess we want it to be better. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm willing to get dirty to figure it out.
Yeah. You know, that's why I didn't want to host this show. I didn't have a problem putting it together.
I'm not crying, you don't get to cry. We're still too fresh for this.
Good luck with that one. You know, I just want to say that it's unfortunate that it took the murder of your son and my son being impacted to soften my heart and to actually start paying attention again to what was going on out here. Is because my son was so impacted by the loss of your son that I was like, what am I doing? We have a platform, we have these things, we need to get, get our hands dirty in the community. And so, as usual, I want you to know we're here for you.
I feel it. Always.
Thank you. We're going to take a short break right now. When we come back, we're talking to Donita Sinclair Martin. All right, welcome back to Community Voices. This is our gun violence roundtable, joined right now by Donita Sinclair Martin. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, it's always good to see you, Donita.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah. The murder of your son is probably one of the most publicized in the city this year. Your son, Lorenzo Anderson Jr., was killed right up there with a chop at the evening of Juneteenth, actually June 20th, but the evening Juneteenth. And I thought that it's important for you to be on this show is because, your son was murdered, but it's just a headline. Kid murdered at the chop, and we wanted to be able to bring some humanity to the situation. Well, first of all, how are you holding up, Donita?
Some days is better than the others. Today, I'm thankful for the opportunity, but it's a little bittersweet, but I'm all right.
Right. I wanted to play a few things here and get your feedback of it. No news clips, don't worry. This is all community stuff because I know that's where you're at right now. But the first is at Emoji Fest. And Emoji Fest, I don't know if you plan to take the stage that afternoon or not. But either way, you ended up on the microphone and you said some real powerful things to the community. Let me play this here.
Oh, you got it. You guys, I'm not a speaker. I'm just a mother, a concerned mother, a mother that's hurting, that want answers. And it's just not just about my son. It's about our whole community because I know it's a ton of people in here out on the hug that done lost their kids. Kids, you guys, not adults, kids. It seemed like we're having parties at the funeral home. I'm sick of it. The T-shirts, we can't have this no more, you guys. But I can't do it alone. So I need my community. And we got to quit talking about it and start being about it. Us community leaders, we got to quit bullshitting. Because we're not picking CD South End. We're community. It's time for change. We say we want change, but we're doing nothing. This is one of us, you guys. This is our next generation. You want to say hi?
Hi.
This is our generation. So if we don't get it together, who's going to be there for them? We need to get our little ones that's in the back. We need to bring them to the front. You guys, we playing games. We run around here with these guns, hurting one another. Yeah, because it is pain. Because I was once one. I hurted the community, but now I'm healing it. And not just because my son's dead. It's because this is my passion. I walk this, I talk this, I sleep this, I eat this. My community. But I can't do it alone. Oh, you guys, I'm just hurting. morning.
You know, Donita, it was so many people that were there that day who were really empowered by your words, your disposition. You know, and every time that I see you out in community, the funny thing is like you the one who called me. I mean,
Right.
especially, you know, I get a phone call early morning, especially when we're over there in the shop. You'd be like, man, are you okay? And it would always take me back, and I'd be like, oh, she's asking if I'm okay, but like, you know, are you okay? And I think that's kind of the role that you've always played in our community, you know, and you kind of said it right there when you're on the microphone. You've been out here working in the community for years. Why don't you talk a little bit about what this community means to you and how bridging these gaps to be able to try and solve these problems, you know, what that means to you as well?
Well, to me, you know, it's just rebuilding this relationship. Like I said, that I was once one of those young kids that was hurting in pain. And like Odessa, I think that's his name, the young man's mom that got killed in the South End, said that they needed a hug. And that is what we need. We need those hugs. We need to know that there are peers, there are leaders, there's mothers, there's fathers, there's places that we can go. I just believe that these kids need to have more than a community center. These programs, we need to adapt more, and we need to build more. It's like I said, it's not a CD or a South End. We are one whole base. We are a community. And the thing is, what are we gonna do as leaders that's gonna bridge this gap and bring us together? It's like Davida said, it's not about this money. The money is not gonna bridge this gap. We need to come together and amend some things, you know, get all on the right track. I've been around you for years. You already know I was a kid up at Miller. And so I looked up to people. We got to find role models that these kids can look up to. We need to have other lanes, other avenues, you know. I didn't have always that. I come from an addiction mother. I come from a father that didn't accept me. And I grew up in the streets thinking that that's where I wanted to be, until I realized I didn't go nowhere. I wasn't nowhere. I wasn't nobody. I didn't even love myself, you know. So now when I look in the mirror, I know my teeth fixed, but now when I look in the mirror, I'm okay with who I am. When it comes to Lorenzo, you know, that young man overcame being a preemie, born at 25 weeks, not even 1 pound, 680 grams. But I installed in his ear at birth, you can do this. You gonna be okay. I got you. You know, I did have him. I still got him. You know, his legacy will not go unheard. It will not go in vain. I just feel that we need to put our priorities in order, put the money to the, you know what I'm saying, to the side, and focus on what matters. And that's these kids' heart, these kids' mind, what they thinking, what they eat, you know what I'm saying, where they sleeping, how they getting their income. Because these are good kids out here. I talk to them all the time. Like today, I talked to a young kid that told me, auntie, I put the gun down. So do you know, I felt like what I'm doing is I'm doing the right thing when a kid tell me he's done with guns. This is a kid that holds them. He got 9mm. He said he's done. So I said, well, then that means there is hope. But like I said, I can't do it alone. And the funding is way important. Facilities way important. It's not incarceration, but we do need some type of structured program to redevelop, you know, reframe the minds of the pain that's being caused. So
and
my thing is,
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I wanted to tell Miss Davida, you know, I'm sorry that she had to get another call on her baby's anniversary. And I just know that I'm tired of reaching out to parents that's in the same pain. However, it does bring me closer. What they don't understand, it does bring me closer to understand families a little bit better. Because I've noticed that a lot of our families of color is hurting, and not just of color, but we are hurting, you know, and we have to identify it ain't Black Lives Matter, we matter. And we have to be okay with who we are and not trying to prove something. We all out here trying to prove something. We're not better than nobody. We're so equal, you know. But go ahead and say what you're gonna say, friend.
What I wanted to say, I wanted to play one more clip here because I wanted to show that you're somebody who's actually putting their money where their mouth is. I know you said that there needs to be more of this and more funding and more programming, but you've taken it upon yourself to bring community together. I'm going to play a clip of a community conversation that you organized at Jimi Hendrix Park.
This is an open conversation. There's no right or wrong. There's no wrong door here. So we're here to listen. We're here to encourage one another, build each other up, and to hear your voice, hear what you have to say. What other people don't hear, let's hear it today. What we've been scared to say, let's say it today.
Tell us what today is all about.
So today is called Conversation. It's giving the community and leaders and parents and concerned members of the community an opportunity to speak, on what's going on, the police brutality, defunding the police, killing black on black crimes, and just resources that we can offer to our community.
Do you feel that conversation is what's been missing in our community?
I believe conversation is a major must, and trust. Just rebuilding trust, bridging gaps that have been ruined, or people that don't even know each other, just giving them an opportunity to know who's out here, what they have to offer. And just really engaging families again, bringing our family, our community back together as a family.
And how important is conversation in our community right now?
Extremely important, because the first line of defense, or the first way to solve anything, we got to converse about it. That's weird, converge. I like that. But we got to have a conversation if we want to get anywhere, period. Even if there's an understanding, we got to talk about the understanding as well. So yeah, conversation is very important.
Right. Last thing, a lot of our viewers, they send messages, they ask about you, they want to know how you're doing. Any words for people out there who are asking how you're doing right now?
Every day is, challenging, but I'm okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I just say, just hold tight to your kids, Love your kids. Be in their life. Be entertained, Not being entertained, but be in their life and do a lot of family activities and talk to them. Talking to them is most definitely important. Yeah.
Thank you, Dania.
Thank you.
You didn't waste any time getting out there and bringing community together and starting these conversations.
Yeah, it's most definitely important. And we got to just keep going, keep doing it. Actually, I'm talking everything in existence here. So I'm going to put a Horst Lorenzo Anderson safe house together. I want these young adults to come somewhere where they can feel safe, know they're safe, not just feel it, know it. There's going to be mentoring, job training, family support. We're going to most definitely engage a lot about family and trauma, and being able to identify that and being okay with just being okay. We're going to have entrepreneur tutoring, financial literacy, because that's important. These kids most definitely would like money and want to be owners. And I believe that they can. They have enough strength to do that. We're rebuilding self-esteem. We're teaching the kids the importance of their transformation and in a safe place. So that's what Mr. Anderson's up now doing, and I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity of the support, It means a lot. It means a lot.
Well, I'll tell you this, Donita, we got a special bond, what I'm saying? And it's been an emotional ride for sure. Yeah. But we're here for you. So when you get all the stuff together for the safe house, you send it over to us, and we're gonna help get the word out for you. We'll bring you on the morning show, and we'll talk about it. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks for being here. We're gonna take a short break right now. When we come back, we have Yonis Saifu. All right, welcome back to Community Voices, a Gun Violence Roundtable. My name is Omari Salisbury. In this segment, we have a survivor. We've been talking about loss, the first three stories here, and we have a story of survival and thriving in that survival is Yonis Saifu. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Right. And Jonas is also an advisory board member at Collective Justice. And the reason I say survivor is that, your story, I'm sure you'll share a bit of it, but you're basically shot with a stray bullet, and the bullet is still lodged in your head. And you've taken that experience of what you've gone through, and you're working in a space. You're working with Collective Justice right now to be able to, I guess, impact the ecosystem that surrounds us or surrounds you right now. I wanted you to take a second here or take a moment. I'm sorry, and tell us about your journey as far as the incident that occurred and where you're at right now.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Ethiopia. Been in Seattle since the early '90s. Went to Washington, Garfield, and I was in a situation where I was almost headed in a different direction, but a small youth organization called Rites of Passage actually helped me set my ways and for me to succeed. So I went to UW, and I currently work for economic development. And so in terms of my situation, a few years after I graduated from UW, I was shot pretty much. A straight bullet at a house I was at, penetrated a window, a wall, and hit me in the back of my head, pretty much leaving me critically just wounded. And so after a few months of learning how to speak, read, write, and going through a lot of therapy, I had to, I was forced pretty much to take time off and just really reflect on what I wanted to do with my life, and really think about what my aspiration is, and really reevaluating where I want to go. And that didn't come for a while though, right? For the first, I'll say, a few years, I was in a place where just healing in all kind of ways. And so, yeah.
Right. And now you're the work that you're doing now at Collective Justice. Why don't you tell us about what you're doing there and why you decided to go that path?
Definitely. So a friend of mine, she knew my brother, and she heard about my story and talked to me about a project that she was working on, Martina. And so she told me about the idea of what they wanted to do, and pretty much is addressing the harm towards in terms instead of wellness, and really hold people accountable and come up with some kind of collective liberal sort of a justice system that's fair. And what I do there is I'm a survivor advising board. I sit on a board where I help talk about my experience and also share my story in order for us to come up with programs and see how effective we could be based on our experiences. I can't hear you. Is that?
There we go. I said, and actually, we have an article up on the screen right now that spotlighted you from the Seattle Times. My question for you, my last question here is that, I mean, going through this life journey, being hit basically by a stray bullet, this clearly it's impacted your life journey moving forward. You're there with Collective Justice. What is it? What are some of the answers? And I know there's probably a lot and they're probably in depth, but what are some of the answers that you see to be able to curb gun violence in our city, and for something like that occurred with you to not happen again to someone else?
I think that's a complex question, and I feel like some of the guests answered already. But definitely, I would add having resources, and so having a youth development program, the program that helped me get in the right direction, and other youth in my age was a program called Rites of Passage Experience. It was in the Central District. And it was a Black man that were there letting me know who I was, really helping me understand the heritage that I come from, being African and being a Black person living in a foreign land. And I feel like those two could be a really good start, but there's a lot of other things that we could talk about.
All right. Jonas, thank you for taking the time to share our story. And, I'm glad we wanted to end this segment with survivors. And I'm glad that you're surviving and you're thriving there at Collective Justice, and that's collectivejusticenw.org. We're going to take a short break right now. When we come back, I'm joined again by Enrique Serna. Welcome back to Community Voices, special gun violence roundtable special. My name is Omari Salisbury, joined by Enrique Serna. Man, Enrique, what a powerful hour there.
Very much so, and just so emotional. I don't know how you made it through the hour, because I know that so much of it is personal as well, because you have a personal connection to these folks, but it's also the community. And what is happening right now is unacceptable. It is also something that we need to be very concerned about. And, with everything we're dealing with right now, the coronavirus, the pandemic, or just strange presidential election, and then, also racism in our country, which is another pandemic. We have a lot of work to do to try to get a hold of this issue regarding guns and violence, and particularly for our young people.
This is true. We have a few minutes here, Enrique, and so in an effort to save time, I've actually got a few short videos from some of the people who are on the panel today. So by introducing some of these videos now, then they don't have to go into a long introduction later. So so we got a few minutes here. I'm glad it worked out. We're going to start off. This is Choose 180. You're going to be hearing from Sean Goode. Sean Goode's one of the panelists today. And this is a clip right here from Choose 180 explaining what they do.
I started meeting with Javon back in January.
My mom just put me into the program with a mentor. So, I wasn't really sure about it at first.
Basically, every Friday, I come here, we talk about his social goals, we talk about his family.
But then I was just like, shoot, could be a good experience.
At least we're aware of our actions, right? Yeah. It's about being aware so we can make a different decision. So tell me about a time that you made that different decision.
Choose 180 is a nonprofit organization. Our foremost goal is to transform systems of injustice to no longer do harm to communities, particularly the Black and Brown community. And we do that through these strategic relationships, like the one we have with the King County Prosecuting Attorney.
What the program aims to do is to not, seek to label a kid for a mistake. It seeks to help a kid make better decisions.
Last year, we supported a little over 500 youth and young adults through a variety of different programmings. Our Choose 180 workshops, when it comes to the youth, over 75% of them don't re-engage the criminal legal system within 12 months of participating in our program. But what's more impressive to me is that each one of those young people are connected to a family. And because that young person is able to go home to their family and not get caught up in the criminal legal system, They're able to be a part of that family, which means that community is better because that young person is better because that family is better.
And in many ways, that's accountability, right? It doesn't always have to be a jail cell or a judge or a courtroom or a prosecutor for that matter.
Some young people are criminalized for behavior and other young people aren't because of the neighborhoods they live in and the frequency of law enforcement and police in those spaces. The difference between a young person who's successful and a young person who has challenges has everything to do with the community surrounding them.
At the end of the day, I'm human. So I make heck of mistakes. Just because you guys don't see them don't mean I don't make them. My role in all of this is to allow the youth to be able to express their truth to an adult, and that adult to be able to articulate that to the parent. What about you in relation to your goal? Where are you? How was last year? Tell me about your school experience. And we also try to do something fun.
If it wasn't for Kaisha, I probably would have been repeating the 6th grade. So, yeah, it's a lot of positive things I have to say about the program.
I love working with people because it just reminds you that we all go through stuff and we all just want to be heard.
All right, that's Choose 180, and we're gonna be hearing from Sean Goode in the next hour. Next video I got right here. This is it's called Credible Youth, and this is Willard Jimerson, United Better Thinking and Credible Messengers, and this is just a short profile from a young man that's in their program.
First and foremost, my name is Delevante Sanders. How I got hooked up with Credible Messengers and with Will and them is I was in King County Jail. I didn't have no money for no lawyer, for one, and two, my bail was already $150,000, so I already felt as in I was guilty. They felt like I was guilty already. That's how they was treating me. And with lack of support from my attorney, my guy Will ended up talking to the prosecutors and just talking and trying to give me a better deal. And I asked deeply for help. I didn't have nowhere to stay before I was in jail. People look at Seattle, I mean, we got a lot of money out here, but there's not a lot of resources for people like us. But my guy Will, he got me in this little transitional housing for the time being until I get back on my feet, and he's in the process of helping me get my own apartment. And this Credible Messenger program is really real, so I'm hoping you guys stay in tune with it and tap in with us, me and Will helped me get out of jail, and he's still working with me and gave up on me. Thank you.
All right, that's Willard Jimerson Jr. Willie J just popped up over here. And United Better Thinking, and somebody else that we're going to be hearing from today as well is Dre Franklin from B.U.I.L.D. This is a clip when he was actually on the AC podcast, just kind of sharing his thoughts on things. Dre Franklin from B.U.I.L.D. That's Brothers United in Leadership Development.
Like sometimes we say we care about our bros and our sisters, in the hood. But sometimes we're doing things that are counterintuitive to care and love. So if we really care, we want to push each other to be to our greatness. We're not judging nobody for whatever activities that they're involved in. Like, I get it. A lot of our members come from that. I was involved in that growing up, but at the same time, like even me reflecting back, really trying to always push people to be better. So sometimes we think that we're doing things that are in the best benefit because we only have so many options that we've been shown. So really getting outside of the comfort zone and pushing people. So sometimes we're doing things, but really we think that we're helping people. We may be putting them on or whatever, but really we're having them play on the freeway.
Right.
They're playing in traffic. And, if we say, hey, would you have your little brother play on the freeway, little sister play on the freeway? No, I wouldn't do that because they're going to get hit by a car. But sometimes our behavior and our activities is like playing in traffic. But that's what we've been shown. That's what we've been force fed. So understanding that and pushing each other to do better, in school, to be an entrepreneur, to take some of the skills and transfer them into real life action. You know what I'm saying? Right. We have all the tools and resources that we need in our community. Tapping into our community, get involved, find a mentor, be a mentor. Right. Like some of these guys already have, people that are active, you already have natural leadership abilities. This is how do you transfer that, and what are you leading people on? Are you leading people to play in traffic, or are you leading people to be better? Is the plan to stay in, or is the plan to get out? So how do you leverage the resources that you have within you and empower yourself and know that you are great?
Right. And one other video that I wanted to share here before we go into the 7 o'clock hour. couldn't join us today because he's on vacation, and it's well deserved, is Dom Davis, Coach Dom. A lot of people know Coach Dom, Community Passageways. And he was actually on with producer Nikki Barron a few weeks ago before he was going to go and broker a truce. He went and brokered a gang truce, some other stuff. But he talked about economic empowerment and how, you know, when young people see a route to economic empowerment, they're ready to put down guns, gangs, and everything else.
At the end of the day, you ain't gonna get the money you want and have the success you want by shooting and killing each other. You go into the penitentiary and you're dying. Nobody wins. Those are the messages we're gonna push out here into the community. And then we're gonna say, here's an opportunity. We're gonna present some opportunities for you to start making your own money and start owning your own properties and owning your own businesses. What helps people put down guns and what helps people to stop shooting each other is when they have wealth and resources. Every community that has an abundance of wealth and resources doesn't have a whole bunch of violence, period. It's data driven. It's science. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows that. So how do we generate our own wealth? We have to sit down and revolve and put our money through our own community. And I'm going to go ahead, and my team is going to go ahead, and other organizations I'm connected to are going to go ahead and start putting resources that we got access to into our community like we already are, but we want to take it to the next level. We want a substantial amount of money to pour into our communities. That's why I just got off another call just today too. I'm working on creating Black financial institutions. We're working on creating a Black credit union. I've been talking to CEOs of credit unions, and they're giving me a lot of good input, and they want to help do this. I'm gonna be talking to some more Black institutions from the East Coast, and we're moving forward on this. We have to create our own financial institutions so our young people that got these guns that are out here gangbanging can actually be brought in and shown, we're going to teach you how to buy a house. We're going to help you get a job, and we're going to teach you how to buy your first piece of property. We're going to teach you how to open up your first business. When you have a purpose to wake up to every day and a plan to wake up to every day, you don't wake up and pick up the gun, you pick up the plan. And that's what happens, right? Or we need to have resources to grow wealth. When somebody has a 401k with $500 or $600 grand sitting in it and can go to their bank account and withdraw 10 grand whenever they need to, I promise you they ain't out here gangbanging. I promise you that. I promise you they ain't here shooting nobody that look like them or anybody, period. I promise you that. So what is really perpetuating this? Poverty is perpetuating this.
Every time I hear him, it's like, I want to run through a wall because he reminds me of a high school football coach is just going to make you, just wants to change your life for the good, and he's just passionate.
Man, that he is. So as we go into hour number 2 here, Enrique, and again, thank you for joining me here tonight, Community Voices. This first hour here is the current state of the streets and, what's going on. And in this hour, we're joined by Seattle Police Chief Adrian Diaz. We're joined by Willard Jimerson Jr. We're joined by Sean Goode, by Dre Franklin, and also by Rico Bembury. And Rico, we don't have a video for, probably because he's an OG. He was around before video. You know what I'm saying? And it's a fortunate but unfortunate thing that we have OGs. We have generational people that have worked on this problem, which means that it's now extended to another generation. But Rico was one of the people early on, as the founder of like the late night programs and all these things around Seattle. And so these are some powerful voices that have a lot of feedback and insight as to what the current state of the situation is. But before we go there, I want to figure out what's going to make this roundtable here the next 2 hours or two and a half hours. Then we're going to 9:30. What's going to make it different? Because you know what? The city of Seattle all came together just 16 months ago.
Walk sign is on, crossing South Jackson Street.
At Jackson and 23rd, at 23rd and East Union, and along 21st Avenue 2, the message is there's more work to do in Seattle's Central District. That feeling is strong on this corner, a place that was the scene of a shooting on May 10th. 2 men were hurt. Royal Lexing was killed. This is one of the reasons why the community came together.
It's important to me because people are dying.
It's why Katrina Johnson wanted to be here.
I lost my cousin to gun violence. Every time I hear another story about life lost and senseless violence, it re-traumatizes me.
I have a sense of urgency around this because there was a fatality. I have a sense of urgency around this because we're continuing to see shots fired.
Lorena Gonzalez was among the city council members and city agencies sitting at the front of the room.
We do what we call our shots fired dashboard.
Seattle police say the Central District continues to see a disproportionate amount of the shots fired calls compared to the rest of the city.
What we've done in the Central District, we've added emphasis patrols into the area, both foot beats and bicycle patrols.
Police have been investigating recent shootings in the Central District and South Seattle, and last month uncovered this: military-style rifles and handguns. Also, the city has been making improvements from lighting to tree trimming. But in this room, they say more work is needed to stop the senseless violence.
I can feel the pain of those family members and what that looks like, and it's heartbreaking.
In Seattle, Natalie Swaby, King 5 News.
There was also discussion tonight about bringing more youth programs and job opportunities to the area.
All right, that was just 16 months ago, Enrique. Everybody came together. It was a big media event. The police were there. The community was there. Victims were there. Advocates were there. And I mean, right now, 16 months later, the problem is, it's increased significantly. And also, I just wanted to point this out. I do see that Reverend Martin Lawson was able to join us. So they'll be representing community passageways. So we do have the good Rev in the mix as well. So that's where it's at. Where we're 16 months since the city made a big noise about this collectively. We find ourselves right here on this platform, definitely looking for solutions. This first hour right here, though, we kind of want people's perspective as to what exactly is going on the streets. And that being said, Enrique, I'll turn over hour number 2 to you.
Well, thank you very much, Omari. Well, we have a lot of ground to cover here, and let me first begin with Seattle's interim police chief, and that is Adrian Diaz. Chief, I hope you're with us this evening to be able to talk about this. Really wanted to get your perspective as to why we are in the situation we are in right now, why the violence has been, there has been an uptick here in South Seattle. And what's being done?
That's a good question of why this year makes it different from other years. We've had a lot of shootings, and over my course of my career, I've been involved in a lot of youth violence prevention work, and we've literally tried to figure out ways that we can drive it down. And for many years, we did drive a lot of violence down, and we've seen an increase come back, but this year is an anomaly year. I mean, we are at the highest level in 11 years. We've had 329 shots fired this year. Let me give that in perspective. We had 332 all last year completely. And we still have 2.5 months left. And we're only three shootings away from what that level looks like. 130 of those shots fired are actually occurring in the South Precinct. So almost 40% of the shootings are in one precinct alone. And, this is the challenging time that we're facing. We have seen an uptick in homicides. We are at, 39 incidences of homicides, which is, much higher than we've seen in previous years. And, when it comes down to looking at who this affects, we know it affects Black males. 48% of our victims are Black, and 78% are male. 45% are under the age of 30, and 62% of our homicides are related to gun violence. And so, we've recovered close to 2,300 shell casings. These are astounding numbers this year. And we've got to figure out ways to, have solutions on the upstream of this type of work. And, I've prided many years of my work dedicated to that upstream work and trying to find ways that we do not have to arrest our way out of these issues. But I also know that at times when we see this type of violence, we've got to also figure out how do we stop it. And there are some times where that's where the police do get involved and do get engaged in bringing some level of justice to families that have seen their loved ones lost. And so it's a balanced of approach of how do we do enforcement, so we bring some closure to the families, as well as how do we do that upstream work on really preventing this type of violence.
Is this a gang-related issue?
You know, when we look at shootings across the whole city and homicides across the whole city, we're seeing just certain numbers. DV is actually pretty stagnant right now. So domestic violence, and while COVID has been an issue of thinking that domestic violence would be up and we would see homicides and domestic violence being up, we're pretty much stagnant. Our homeless community, which had an uptick last year in homicides, is pretty stagnant. But, you know, we also look at only 45% are under the age of 30. And so it's not necessarily all related to gang violence. Some of this is random levels of violence that is occurring, but some is related to gang violence, but it's not all of it.
Let's talk about COVID and the impact here, because the one thing about COVID that we have discovered, actually it's been there, is the fact the racial disparities when it comes to healthcare and so many different issues related to the pandemic. As I said, they've been there. They've always been there. It's just that now there is a bigger focus because we know that they're so severe and people of color are being hit hard by it. But how is COVID impacting this? The fact that we have to stay in shelter, we have to stay in place, we have to be careful about what we're doing. Tough to be together around people that much.
Yeah, you know, I think it's changed our social environment. When you start to think of what I did notice is there wasn't a mass increase in shootings or shots fired at the very beginning of the COVID pandemic. So when around March 3rd, when this kind of city really structured itself into doing more of kind of a lockdown type of COVID response, shootings were pretty, actually, they kind of dipped down a little bit. We actually saw more shootings getting closer to the end of May. In June, June and July were huge spikes in the amount of shootings that we had. And we're still into the COVID pandemic, but the summer months, like every other summer, we do see increases in shootings usually during the summer because there's more youth that are out, more young adults out, more interaction. But what's strange about this year is that typically we also see an increase of shootings around nightlife. And because of COVID, many businesses aren't open. Many of that nightlife situations aren't open. And so we are constantly trying to figure out how do we, respond to violence. And then what we've also seen is that when we do make arrests, that many of the people that we're arresting aren't necessarily even in the city. And that is a part of, when we start to talk about health disparities and criminal justice disparities, it also it lends the discussion to the gentrification that has occurred, where many people have moved outside the city and are coming into the city at times, and when they see somebody that they have a disagreement with, they're picking up a gun and using it for that level of violence.
So one of the things that you have done since you have taken over as chief, as the interim chief, is that you announced sort of a reorganization of your officers and how you're going to deploy them. How are you applying that with dealing with the violence then in South Seattle?
Yeah, so, Friday was probably, so we brought 100 officers back into patrol. We've created this community response group that has also been doing some of our roll calls in the community, going out and meeting with business folks and residents and trying to interact and develop some level of understanding of the community that they're going to be engaging in. And so that started Wednesday. Friday, we were hit with probably one of the most strangest days, I think, in that I can remember. But we started off with around 4:08. We started off with a shooting that it had close to 70 rounds being fired in that shooting. We then had a couple hours later, 3 victims went to hospitals in and around the Seattle area. And a couple hours later, we then had a shooting that just wasn't too far from the first shooting at the Atlantic Street boat ramp. And we had 1 homicide in that and 2 victims that were shot with gunshot wounds that went into a car and were driving up Rainier to get to the hospital, end up hitting and striking and killing somebody on their way to the hospital. And then simultaneously to that, we had a stolen vehicle involved in a collision, a rollover collision that it created some people in critical care. So we had that incident going. About 45 minutes later, we had another traffic collision hit and run, where that was also a death that resulted in that. Simultaneously, we also had the vehicle that we had in the first shooting. We stopped and recovered 3 guns that were involved in the 70 rounds being fired. And so, just in that Friday, that isn't a normal Friday. That isn't something that is, this violence just all occurred all within one day, which was close to 100 rounds being fired over the weekend. Total with another shooting that we had in West Seattle, we were close to 140 rounds being fired. And that isn't a normal weekend. That isn't something that we, this is where we got to figure out how do we call upon our community to say this violence has to stop. And because there's victims in this, the community is traumatized by the rounds that are constantly being fired. And so this is so important for us to work with community on.
Maybe it also shows just how unusual these times are in having all of this go on this way. Let me move on to our other guests that are with us this evening. I want to bring in Sean Goode. Sean, talk a bit about what you're trying to do with your young people and reaching out to them to maybe curb this or stop this before it even gets going.
Yeah, thanks for creating the space and for the opportunity to be part of this conversation. Adrian and I worked together for many years in community, and at a period of time when I was helping steward a gang and group intervention team in the city of Seattle and South King County, a time that he referenced to where we felt like we were able to get ahead of some of these incidents of violence. And I'll tell you, at that same time, we were still losing young people to gang and group violence as a result of guns. And I was also serving as a minister in the community where I was carrying the weight of supporting young people who were being impacted by gun violence and then eulogizing funeral services for those same young people that we were servicing, which brought me to the place where I'm serving today, where we're working actively to engage young people at pivotal moments before they get they're suffering in a way that leads them to picking up a gun and causing harm to themselves and others, and building support around them so that way they have the community they need to honor a commitment to a new direction for their life.
So what do you see what's happening right now? I mean, why, as we just heard from the chief, it's almost like it at times is out of control.
Yeah, well, I think one of the challenges is that we regularly hear that the community needs to step up. The community needs to step up. But what we're dealing with is the aftershocks of hundreds of years of systemic racism and a lack of economic equality that allows for people to live in impoverished situations, and as a result, get caught in this trap where poor decisions are being made because the access to the resources to make good decisions simply aren't present. I mean, we declared racism a public health issue in King County, and the byproduct of racism is a variety of things. I mean, you have the redlining, there's inadequate education, lack of employment, fatherlessness as a result of mass incarceration, a lack of economic mobility. The list goes on and on and on, and all of those conditions create a point for people who are living in those spaces where they are led down a path that seems inevitably to be in conflict with law enforcement. And their behavior then in turn is criminalized because those are the neighborhoods that are most often overly policed. And so we find ourselves in this situation in large part because of historical matters that are beyond the reach of a single community movement. What I can say is this, is that we are at a very opportune time where collectives like King County Equity Now are standing together and bringing people into solidarity with each other. And in that solidarity, we are standing saying that we need more than just resources for our community. We need intentional divestment from the things that cause harm. And in addition to those divestment, investments in things that bring in the supports, so we can begin to deconstruct the things that have put us in this place and begin to build up the supports necessary to live into a future that's been unlike anything we've been able to achieve up until this point.
Let me move also on to, at this time, I want to talk to Willard Jimerson. Willard, your efforts in the community, you may be on the same line of Sean here. Your take here on what you think is happening and what needs to be done in the community and what you're doing now.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to say thank you, to brother Omari Salisbury for providing this opportunity that's very needed and necessary. And also thank you to the other panelists who are doing a due diligence in their own regard to, hold up the mantle of helping to preserve the lives of young folks who are deserving of such an opportunity. So in the work that I do as the program manager, community facilitator with Zero Youth Detention, our effort is to do exactly what Sean just talked about in the regard of divesting from things that are of an intentional harm systemically. And so with an effort that is in alignment in our collaboration with Choose 180 and others, we are developing what we're developing and building out as a comprehensive public safety plan, and also using a regional approach or response by bringing in a lot of different organizations, or what I like to refer to as experts who are already underground doing this particular kind of work in regards to intervention and prevention aspects, bringing that cohesive aspect around stopping folks from operating in silos, stopping folks from being invested or sponsored or encouraged to operate in silos, but putting folks in a way where they can magnify their strength and their power and their will and their intentionality to be able to preserve the lives of not only young folks, but also their families and the connected folks in their communities. And so through this particular effort, we are building out this regional response to gun violence. We look at, not only talked about racism being a public health, so is gun violence. This is a social determinant of health that is of a negative impact, and is also one of the most preventable causes of death, right? If a person is maybe declared, to live 6 months because of a form of cancer, we know what to expect and we know how to help that person transition. But gun violence will take your life right away, but it's also the most preventable cause of death. How do we do that? We have to take the same quality of care of investment that we're doing with this other killer pandemic by the form of COVID-19 and look at this other public health issue or public health concern when it comes to gun violence in the same regard, by investing in the quality of care, by bringing experts into the operation room and allowing the support system that needs to be wrapped around that aspect into the visitor room. And there's a coordinated effort. And this is what we're doing with this collaborative and bringing in these folks in this space by doing what she talked about, critical incidents response, doing strategy call-ins and connecting with the PAOs, looking at the shots fired, not only looking at the data, because oftentimes Black and brown folks, we don't need that. And those are like after effects. We are those individuals who understand what's going on in the community and just want to usher the expertise into space so we can be able to do the work effectively. And it really comes down to building out relationships, to build a honing on the supports, the services that are needed in order to build out a quality care of life for every single person. And oftentimes we refer to these populations as at risk or high risk. They're not really those things. They're just the furthest removed from the resources. And we need to make sure that the gaps that exist with those particular populations are closed. And this is the efforts that we're working on today.
Thank you. I want to go to Dre Franklin. Dre, one of the important efforts I think that needs to happen is community to step up. Not just those that, as we've heard, that are running organizations that are trying to help young people, but I guess the people in the community themselves, parents and fathers and aunts and uncles stepping up to try to make a difference as well. Can you talk a bit about why and how you're trying to make that work and with the work you're doing?
Yes, definitely. Thanks for having us. I want to start, by paying respect to the first hour of folks that came on to share their stories. It takes a lot to, come on and peel off scabs and reveal your traumas to try to solve the problem. So I want to thank the folks who did that, and also pay respect to the elders whose shoulders we stand on in this work. There's a lot of elders in the city that's been doing this work for a long, long time. To answer your question, I think really part of the issue is the city of Seattle, King County, we want to talk about equity. There's really a lack of equity when we talk about how we're dispersing resources. And really, like, a lot of the foundation is around trust, respect, accountability, and there's a lack of that in the community, systematically that's been installed in the community. So really, we need to have spaces to heal from our trauma, understand what's going on, look at our social norms and how we're behaving as a community, but understand that those behaviors have been given to us over generations. But really, we need to have space to really slow down, think, and heal from a lot of the trauma that we've been through. A lot of people have PTSD, got other mental health issues because they've been traumatized through, losing relatives to the criminal justice system, to the education system, so on and so forth. So to answer your question, we do need more, especially we need more because there also has been a systematic stripping of Black men out of the families to where it puts a added weight on the Black women to where they have to step up and other women of color to have to step up and bear that load because there's been a systematic stripping of us of our education, our employment opportunities, our education. We end up getting criminal records at a higher level. There's health disparities. There's all these different issues if you look at all the data, but we're not really investing in the communities in ways to where we can support the community and support Black men and boys. So we do need, you said, mentors, coaches, teachers. We need more Black men to step into those spaces. We need more young Black men to be the next generation. So it has to be intergenerational, the work that we have to do.
Move on here now to Rico Bembry. It was mentioned that Rico goes way back. Actually, I remember Rico way back because I've gone way back. Rico, you were very active in starting late night activity to get young people off the streets into playing sports, basketball, these types of things. I don't know where all that stands now. Obviously, during COVID, we're not being able to do those things. But I'm wondering if some of what you did in the past can be applied to what we're dealing with now, particularly when we get the opportunity then to get out of our homes and get back into have a recreational thing going on at a gym and all of those things. What do you think?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank O and the team at Converge for doing this program. This is critically important. What this represents for me is 3 generations of this work. And what I want to acknowledge is that Dre Franklin was kind enough to acknowledge me and 2 or 3 or 4 other brothers who really developed and launched the late night recreation program 30 years ago. So what you want to know is that late night, the institution, was started 30 years ago and it still exists today. That's beautiful. The Teen Life Center was developed 20 years ago and it still exists today. So I want to focus on one thing that's really important. There are a lot of lives lost, but there are thousands of lives that are saved by the work that people like Dre Franklin, people like O, the people like Chukundi Salisbury, the people like who have spoken on this program tonight that are doing. So let's not forget the work that we're doing that's working. Because the moment we stop and we think we're defeated, we lose. And so I'm not afraid to say I'm 63 years old. I'm a great grandfather, and I have not given up. And it's because of the energy of folks like Dre Franklin and the other brothers that have come on, and the sister who lost her son. That gives me motivation to continue. Now, we have to take breaks, but we have to continue. That's very, very important. The other thing is there are things that work or trends that happen. There's something that I learned when I went to graduate school. It's called congruity of waves. And what happens in society and technology, there's a 40-year trend that happens in which things repeat themselves. If you go back 40 years and you see the booming of technology, that's happening again. Right now, people are on virtual reality. So what they're seeing on video games, what they're seeing on games, and what's playing out on social media, they move that to the streets. And so you're seeing right now, the other thing that's hitting is the economic situation is so challenging in Seattle right now. There's a disparity of about almost 50% between mainstream populations and communities of color. So they're moving south to South King County. Well, guess what else is moving to South King County that we're not paying attention to? Number one, Amazon has a major facility in South King County, right? And so it's about linking with public and private sector to change the economic status of kids so that they don't have to do that. What Dominique said earlier, what this brother said that preceded me, it's important that people won't be in traffic if they have something to drive to protect them. They need resources to sustain themselves. Number two, I think the climate, what's going on right now is if 45% of the shootings were young people beneath the age of 30, then that means that 65% of the shootings were young adults or adults over the age of 30. And so when you have young men of color dying, that means the institutional knowledge and wealth they have in the community to provide the guardrails for young people, that's gone. When you have another portion of young men and average age men over the age of 30 to 60, 30 to 70 that are incarcerated, that's another lane and a 4-lane highway for young people that's gone. Then you have mothers who have overburdened with trying to care for young kids and watch teenagers. That guardrail's gone. So you have young people out here trying to protect themselves and they don't have a father to talk to. They don't have an uncle to talk to. They don't have a neighbor to talk to or coach to talk to. And then the youth workers who are really out here burning and doing the work, they get burned out. There's a life cycle. The first responders in these communities aren't police officers. Let's get it straight. The first responders are the ones who call the police officers. They're the first responders. I was at late night several nights, and it was us that broke up hundreds and hundreds of fights over 10, 15, 20 years, right? Where the police didn't have to get involved. And so people need to take care of the soul that serves. So you have people who are serving out here, and nobody creates the respite for them to get the care they need, to get the mental health services they need, the PTSD to deal with that, the depression, the anxiety, the not sleeping at night. I was up till 4 a.m, right? It's just something that's a result of the work I've done for 35 or 40 years. And so what I've shifted to now that works is my wife and I have developed 2 transitional houses. Now, they're not really public spaces right now for people because what we've done is we've created an environment in which we want, in anonymity, parents to send their children to us so that we can help care for them and guide for them when they need respite care, 72 hours of respite care, sometimes a week, to just give them a break. A secondary thing that happens is we have to create new affinity groups that create the new rites of passage. And it's creating and developing new leaders. If we don't have enough, we need to train more. We need to train more. The other thing that's really interesting about the institution, just take a note of this. Stick a pin in this. Whenever you have a young person who is developing these amazing skills, and then the light gets shined on this young person, the Dominique Davises, the Andre Franklins, they get attacked by the system, the same system that's attacking these families and young people. They don't tell you the times that they spend dealing with being written up. They don't tell you the times they spend before panels being judged for misgivings or things they didn't do. I went through that. I went through that for 30 years in the city of Seattle. Okay, and here's the badge of honor they gave me. Now, when I was ready to leave the city of Seattle, I was injured. I had a carpal tunnel injury, right? And so instead of offering me a badge, they offered me a custodial position. Now, I'm a person who raised millions of dollars for the city of Seattle, right? Now, in most people, that might have crushed them, but I'm giving you the reality. I'm telling you my truth is fact. These are facts. And the purpose.
Rico, I want to move on and just also bring in Reverend Martin Lawson. We'll have more from you in a bit. Reverend, talk a bit about, I know that you work with Dominic Davis and with community passages. And of course, you know the passion that he brings to trying to help these young folks out there. What are you seeing? What do you see at this time needs to be done?
Well, thank you for having me. Like you said, I work with Dominic Davis with Community Passageways, and in no way can I fill his shoes. I mean, you saw the energy just in that video. I mean, this is life work. This is hard work for him, and this is life work and hard work for many of us. What we're seeing is, I mean, many of the panelists that spoke earlier, they're saying the same thing, that it's access to resources. It's a lot of times what happens when these things, when these incidents occur, is we look at the what. There's another shooting, there's another incident, but we need to get beyond that and look at the why. Why are these things happening? Why are these young people, like Rico said, that there's no access to recreation, there's no access to jobs, there's no access to economic inequality and disparities. These things have been going on for centuries, for generations, and so the pain, the woundedness is passing on to from one adult to the young adult to the youth, and we need to get in and break up that cycle. And so one of the things that I believe that we need to do to change that is we need to begin to fund the community resources. It's very hard. We talked about the community becoming involved in changing these endeavors or changing these incidents. It's hard for a community member who's wounded themselves to then attend to the woundedness of somebody else. And on the topic of wounded, if most of us have coached or played sports, if we see a LeBron James with a broken wrist, we're not going to expect him to perform at the same level as he does with a healed wrist. And we're going to give him time to recuperate and heal that wrist so that he can begin to perform at the same level as those other professionals or above that level. Our community, because of the way that the racial disparities and marginalization and so on and so forth, for centuries we've been wounded, we've been injured, and the gun violence is a symptom of those injuries and that woundedness. And we've never had the time or the ability or the resources to be repaired or to be made whole of that. And it wasn't just an accidental injury that happened to us and to our families and our generations. It was intentional. I mean, they on purpose, they took our language, they took our religion, they took our families. And so we're still dealing with the trauma of those things that happened to us generations and centuries ago. And we've never had a time to heal from the PTSD, from the trauma, the economic, the societal injury and harm that has happened to us. And so and they're still piling things on, the mass incarceration. So instead of individuals being incarcerated and having a chance to be rehabilitated, they're just in there, and they come out a lot of times worse than when they went in. And so it's a system that's meant to perpetuate these disparities in our communities. And so until we begin to look at the what and attack not the what, but the why, until we begin to really just, break the cycles of that why, we're going to continue to have that what. But we have a lot of organizations, a lot of people on this call right now who are doing the work, who are really getting down to the foundational causes of these issues, and we're beginning to uproot it. And I believe that with panels like this and us coming together, like Will Jimerson is bringing a bunch of groups together, and Sean Goode and all of us are beginning to have those conversations and support one another's work, I believe that we're going to be able to turn the tide.
Thank you very much. I want to move back to Chief Diaz. Okay, so there was, the recent city council decision to defund the police to a certain extent, and that talk continues, as well as trying to, at the council level, see what they can do to provide resources and funding to organizations that we've been just talking with this evening. So I'm just wondering, Chief, if you could talk a bit about how you guys all work together. Yes, maybe you're losing some of those officers that you would like to have, officers of color too, but how do you see yourself then balancing what police need to do to protect citizens, and at the same time help these organizations in the community that are working to try to stop the violence there?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think it's a collective response. We all have to figure out ways that we can offer some input into the organizations that are going out and doing the work, so they are able to be very responsive to that work in real time. Because as we transition some of our like dispatch services into more of what we would say is a different agency that could actually do community dispatch. Until that time, we've got to figure out ways that we can work in real time with these organizations, so they're able to respond out to, sometimes to shooting scenes, or find ways that they're able to connect when officers respond to, say, a domestic violence, that we can. We might handle one part of the actual domestic violence, but the kids that are experiencing that trauma in that household, how can we get organizations to be able to treat the actual like youth that are impacted by that violence? Because if they see that violence growing up, they're going to end up, trying to mimic what that violence looks like. So, when we talk about, I'm very big in trying to figure out how do we invest in many of these organizations. When we do talk about the defunding piece, I do think that there are areas of policing that we can, move away into other different types of agencies, mental health, homelessness, and figuring out how ways we can support youth violence prevention work and how we can, invest in those areas. But I do have a thought of, I know what I have to respond to when it comes to public safety and shootings and robberies and rapes and all other different types of crime throughout the city. And I also know how many officers it takes to that, to achieve some level of that safety. And so I think we've got to figure out, how do we build upon these organizations? If I was to say, if many of these organizations were to say, you have 100 people that you need to hire tomorrow, it's going to take a little bit of time for those organizations to kind of build those platforms, build the capacity to do that. And so, and for me, I've got to be able to still maintain some level of safety throughout the community until those organizations start to really build up and really make that difference in the community. And so I think that this is something that, as we work with many agencies and community, we could see this investment increase into the community. And then we can also see at times, if there is a reduction in calls for service for police, that we can actually maybe start to see that we have less officers that are needed to respond to those types of calls. But for right now, I know what our department needs to maintain some level of safety.
I want to go to Sean Goode. Sean, how do you see, if, I don't know what kind of funding you have, but if you are able to get more funding, how do you see applying that to try to curb the violence that we're experiencing now? And then also the long term here, how you make a difference and what you apply, how you apply those resources to make a difference?
I mean, candidly, there's not a single organization that can be resourced to stop what it is that we've been experiencing for decades on top of decades on top of decades in our community. So first and foremost, we need to be able to begin to address the income inequality. We need to be able to address the causes for gentrification, the overdevelopment of spaces that have been historically Black. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, which is why a collective of brilliant Black PhDs and community leaders, business owners, and nonprofit folks have gotten together with King County under the leadership of King County Equity Now to stand in solidarity with an approach that we need to begin to immediately divest from these things that don't actually create safe community and invest in alternatives, and like Work Like Mine or Community Passageways or United Better Thinking and organizations like ours, where we could certainly build up some of the infrastructure. I mean, Dre Franklin has been working on more than just growing out that afro from the waves he had back in January. He's also been working on building up an outreach team to be able to engage young folks in the South End. So there's a variety of different approaches. There's a variety of people leading in a multiple capacities throughout our community that certainly need to be resourced. And as Reverend Lawson said, not only resourced, but also given the staffing capacity so that not everybody's working at full tilt. I mean, consider what it would be like, just for a moment, in this imaginary world that we can live into, if an outreach worker who's showing up at a critical moment can get paid a six-figure salary to do that, and even have the opportunity for overtime where they could make kind of high six figures by their desire to show up and be present in the lives of young people. That's not actually the world we live in today, but somebody in a militarized uniform with a weapon can show up on scene, de-escalate tension, and get paid in that type of way. And the risk that they're both mitigating is very much the same. So we are at a crucial moment in our city where we can have a conversation around the things that we truly value. Then the things we value are the things that we invest in. And we can begin to invest in alternatives, but we have to do so aggressively. I believe it was Brother Willard who talked about violence as a public health issue and comparing that to the disease of COVID and how aggressively we've been in our response. I mean, we shut down businesses. We forced people to stay at home. We told them not to travel, to wear masks, and took a variety of dramatic measures to stop the spread of this disease. Well, as a community, we're suggesting that that violence only creates more violence, and that if violence is state sanctioned, that it only contributes to more violence, whether or not that's state sanctioned or not. So we should stop those that are delivering violence, whether it be folks in community or folks in militarized uniforms, and create alternatives and resource them aggressively at the same level as policing has been resourced as, and see if we can't create public safety through alternative measures. The last thing I'll say, just is that that most people that have a conversation around this divestment and investment, where we get stuck at is, well, we need police. And many of the people that say we need police are the folks that don't actually have to activate police and haven't historically needed police. And so it's of the opinion of many that the people who are regularly being engaged by law enforcement, those who are living in poverty, because 80 to 90% of the cases that went before Superior Court in King County were people who qualify for a public defender. So we know very well that poverty is what's being policed here, that they should be the ones determining what actually keeps them safe. If Adrian, I got much respect for him and the call on his life to be able to serve in this capacity. But if I sent Adrian to the grocery store and said, can you go buy me some groceries? He's likely to show up with some things that I actually don't want or don't need in my kitchen. And effectively, that's what's been happening when we're not leaning on the voices of those that are most impacted by these systems to determine what public safety looks like for them. And we are at a critical moment in our city where we can shift the paradigm to where the power truly lives with the people, and the people most impacted can determine what's on their grocery list and make sure that their refrigerators are stocked with the meal that creates the safe communities that they truly want to live in.
Well, can the two of you actually come up with a grocery list that you would actually like together and work together? Because that's what it comes down to, right?
Well, and I in earnest believe
the police. Don't you agree? Or do you agree?
I think that we need public safety. How we define public safety is up to the interpretation of those that are asking for those services to show up in their community. Imagine a world, right? Imagine a world where we're not dealing with 70 shots in one incident over a weekend. Imagine a world where there's not a car that's taking off on its way to Harborview that's running into somebody in a crosswalk and the pedestrian is then murdered, right? Imagine a world where that's not actually what it is that we're navigating. There's worlds like that exist. They're called the suburbs. And the suburbs operate like that because they're economically mobile. There's people with access to resources, quality education, jobs, and all the things that are lacking in the communities that are suffering from this disease of violence. So I don't actually think it's a stretch to envision a world where young people aren't shooting at each other and we don't need police to respond in those ways, because there's neighborhoods today that are not calling the police and have not had to call the police for anything except maybe like a mail prowl or graffiti or somebody breaking into their car and petty crimes.
Yeah, let me bring in the chief here. You want to respond to that, Chief?
I think there's a way that we've worked together. So in the past, and so I think to your point is I would love to see a world that we could actually work together to actually find out what type of grocery list that we can both come up with to say, okay, here we serve the community because we're one community, and that we can be a part of that community, and the police can represent a symbol of that community. And it's not the whole, the police department aren't the whole community, but they're a symbol that can actually give and offer some level of resources to the community. And I think that, that's where we can have that conversation about what does that grocery list look like? How can we work together to, because your resources along with my resources, we can make a huge difference in that. And I think it's not one or the other. I think that in this conversation, we have to be careful of separating that us versus them mentality. And I think, for me, as I run this agency and as I take, that leadership, I know that there are, I know about the institutional racism. I know about, and for me, it's about trying to break that down. It's trying to change the whole system as a whole, to be figuring out how do we engage our community and how do we become part of it, but also address public safety needs throughout the whole city. And I think we all have to come together with understanding what that grocery list looks like, so we can share each other's resources, and so we can offer that better meal, that healthier meal to the community.
Let me quickly go to Dre Franklin and the guy with the wonderful fro. I wish I had your hair, dude. Let me tell you that, Dre, if you're there, what's at the top of your list? What's at the top of your grocery list?
So at the top, this is I made a joke. This is AC. This is after Corona. I haven't got no haircut since it's been Corona. So this is AC. BC. Sean was talking about BC,
I like it. It looks good.
Cool. I don't know about the grocery list, but what I do want to touch on is that police don't stop crime; they respond to crime, right? And the ask is not for 100% reduction. The ask is for 50% and reinvest, because the Black communities felt like they've been paying for a disservice. It's actually not felt like we have been paying for a disservice. When we talk about police, and I've worked closely with Adrian over the years as well. I like Adrian personally as a person, but as far as the police as an institution, as he said, that's a racist. It's an institution that's steeped in racism and over policing Black and brown communities. And so I think really the top of the list is we really need the resources. Like he said, we need the resources to be able to serve our community. We need the resource. We need, like Sean said, none of us are getting paid six figures. Rico talked about 35 years of trauma and drama that he's dealt with. He's not getting paid overtime. He's not getting, long-term health care provided for all the trauma and all the PTSD that he's dealing with, now that he's 60-something years old. And so the reality, he didn't get paid, no $300,000 a year to do the work that he's done. You're going to hear a story later on about a young man that I worked with from 9 into his early 20s. That was just off the strength of the relationship that I had with this cat. I wasn't getting paid no extra. I wasn't getting no overtime, no double time, no time and a half. And that's the reality is we talk about equity in the Martha King County in Seattle, Chief Seattle, we need to make sure that we're actually investing in putting our money where our mouth is when it's time to do it. So like Sean said, we've been getting the wrong groceries, the wrong ingredients to be successful and thrive. We want to thrive. The Black community wants to thrive, and we're in solidarity. It's asking to demand that we make the investments and divest from things that are damaging us and invest. So right. That's what I would add to the conversation is really that we need to make sure that understand that the police don't stop crime, they respond to crime. And like Sean said, if we can put systems in place and build a resiliency, then folks won't need to be engaging in negative behavior. A lot of times this really breaks down to people having low self-esteem, self-value, self-hate, and all that's perpetuated because that's what's been given to us over generations. So if we can have resources, ongoing resources, the other thing is what happens is we fund things and then things taper down, and then we pull that resources back and redirect them. So it needs to be an ongoing sustainment. Like Rico said, the guardrails need to be there. The guardrails need to be there regardless, because otherwise people are going to get in traffic and be all the way in the express lane when they're 12, 13 years old. I started going to funerals when I was 11 years old. I have not stopped going to funerals. And I'm not talking about funerals from people dying of old age. I'm talking about gun violence, car accidents, overdoses, those types of things that are all like Willard. So these are all preventable things. If we have the proper guardrails, but we need to make the real investments to make sure that we have the guardrails so people aren't getting in. If they're going to get into the traffic, they need to start, on the arterials. They don't need to go straight into the express lane. But with all these guardrails, as Rico eloquently outlined, if we don't have fathers, if mothers aren't having the respite that they need, if we don't have proper schools, if we don't have mentorship, if we don't have education, healthy food, so on and so forth, then people are going straight from, walking straight into the express lane. And so I think we really need the resources that are needed to make sure that we're able to heal, build relationships, build trust. That's going to take time, energy, and resources. And it's not about, the answer isn't about waiting for community to resource themselves up or get ready to. The answer is we need to divest and reinvest, because we haven't really made the proper investments in the communities that are being most impacted. Look at the data, use the data, and say, this is where, if we're going to have equity, not equal, we're going to have equity, we need to invest in the communities that are most impacted.
Let me bring in Omari. Omari, I want to bring you back here. I hope you're all ready to go. I think you come back at just the right time, because we've set it up, teed it up to talk about those things, recipes, guardrails, freeways, on-ramps, solutions. All these are the things that we want to really start moving in our conversation right now. So what do you think there, my man?
Well, first of all, I think this is a very interesting discussion, and I'm glad that, you know, we've got a very informed panel from, you know, from people that, as they use the term, the work, people that are new to the work and people that have been doing the work for decades, like when you talk about Rico Bimber. And we've also got Chief Diaz here giving a perspective from a public safety and a police perspective. This is an important conversation that, you know, that's happening right now at a very important time in our city. I wanted to switch gears here for a second, because, you know, when we talk about guardrails, we're talking about when kids are already maybe at a point of making bad decisions, or they've made some bad decisions already. And a lot of our panelists here are dealing with young people who are in the system or on the verge of being in the system. But also I wanted to kind of stop right here and talk about upstream. When we talk about it, and when you really talk to, whether it's a Sean Goode or a Willard or a Rico, or even the Chief Diaz, people want to be able to reach young people upstream, meaning before they're even thinking about a gun, before they're even thinking about a gang. And so it's a good opportunity to bring in my brother. Where's he at? Bring him up here, please. Bring in my brother. You know my brother Enrique?
I do. We've been on panels together. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How you doing there?
I'm amazing, man. I'm just happy to be here.
Good. It's a family affair tonight. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the only thing is, I wish I had a cap. Where's my cap? You know?
Well, you know, that's how we do it, man.
That's just because you still got hair. That's all. and you know, I'll tell you,
the wash and wear hair kind of.
I'll tell you, Enrique. Last time I had my brother on, he was like, "Well, you need to start saying you're big brother," and I said, "No problem. You need to start saying you're good looking brother when you talk about me."
Here we go.
Hey, here I am, right in the middle of you two. So let's be nice, brotherly love. You know.
Yes,
well,
indeed.
So kind of it's two things here, and you know, 100 Black Parents is an organization that's kind of what we're saying. Catching children upstream and showing them different things and what's going on and everything else. But I kind of wanted to preface this conversation by hopping in the time machine in a name that came up earlier. And so we'll say his name again, Tyrone Love. You know, Tyrone Love was somebody, you know, you talk about doing everything right, pillar of the community, worked with young people. And man, he was murdered there on basically on 23rd and Cherry, where so many other people have been murdered. I was at almost 11 years ago now. Right. And so this is a clip. Let me play this clip right here. This is a clip. And you can tell this is old school, because this is back when Omari Stone was still around. This is from 2011, Como 4 News.
Seattle police are asking for the public's help in solving the 2-year-old murder of Tyrone Love.
Investigators say they've had a tough time because witnesses simply won't cooperate. Como 4's Omari Stone reports officers hope a new approach will offer up new clues.
I'm not at peace.
Christina Bradford wishes she could wipe away the pain as she grieves over the senseless murder of her brother, Tyrone Love.
It's just not fair that this happened to him.
A gunman killed the club promoter 2 years ago while he walked home on East Cherry Street from his job at Pioneer Square.
He was wonderful. He tried to help everybody. He was always working with kids and always pushed people to stay in school.
Tyrone Love was an incredible young man who made some very valuable contributions to the community here.
Seattle police detectives have received.
cut a little short right there. But
Yeah.
I know that talk about how the murder of Tyrone Love all those years ago has impacted some of the things that you're doing in the community, even around 100 Black parents.
Yeah, you know what I would say, man. First of all, rest in peace, Tyrone, and really rest in peace, Roberta, his mother. I didn't believe that a person could die from a broken heart until she passed away shortly after Tyrone. And so, you know, the irony is that me and Tyrone would walk around the CD, and we had those Break the Silence posters. He was actually engaged. We were working on violence prevention and reduction when he was killed. And so, you know, with the Silent War Project, as you know, and just over the years, it's one of the things that's really made me realize that we have to just start earlier. You know, I've been working with high schoolers and most definitely 18 to 24 for years, but you know, it just really made me realize that we have to get further and further upstream, and really surround our children with love. You know, like Tyrone Love, honestly. And so, you know, he definitely impacted a lot of things. I would call him my protege. I felt like he was a young Chukundi, if you will. He really was of service to his community. And you know, that's why we named the scholarship after him, and we continue to keep his legacy alive today. And we didn't let the media vilify him, you know, at the time, because when he was murdered, oftentimes, and to your point, as you talked about earlier with Alicia, people always go to, well, what was he doing there, you know, or this or that. He walked around the CD at all times of the night like he didn't have a car, you know, and like Connor, when he, you know, he was just in front of his house. But oftentimes we go to, or the media initially goes to, well, what was this person doing there? We all have a right to live. As Willard would say, you know, nobody should be taking anybody's life, and most certainly Tyrone's life shouldn't have been taken that night.
Right. I want to jump in, and then I'll let Enrique throw a question over to you. But I wanted to jump in right here and talk about this program that you've been up to this year. Of course, COVID has kind of put a kibosh on it, but that's the Young Black Males and Females Weekend at Camp Orkyla, and where you're taking kids out of the city and showing them a new experience over at Camp Orkyla. I'll just play this clip right here.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
Hey! You did it! How you feel, Khalil? How you feel? Oh yeah! You did that. You did that. Yeah, you did that.
All right. Yeah, you had a question, Enrique?
Yeah, I was curious as to how was it difficult to get parents to buy in to what you wanted to do? Because, you know, in many ways you're talking about kind of giving different experiences to young people and kind of taking them out of an environment to give them something else. So did they all jump into that? Do they think, you know, this is the way to go?
You know, we got a lot of pushback in a lot of different ways. And quite frankly, a lot of parents only let their kids know because I'm a trusted, you know, member of the community. People have known me for years just as DJ and as a city employee and all these other roles that I play in the community. So a lot of people let their kids come just because I personally was going. And then I got a lot of pushback from other parents because it was, you know, one year we did it during football season and people were so upset. Because it's just different. You know, it's a whole different thing. Many of the kids had never been outside of the city before. You know, one funny story I like to tell, Rike, is that we had a young person get on the ferry at Anacortes to go to Camp Ocala, and he called me over. He said, Mr. Chukundi. I said, what's up? He said, here, I got to ask you a question. And then he said, where's the seatbelt? And that's when I realized we were doing the right thing, right? We're on the ferry going to Anacortes. Imagine 250 black men and boys at Anacortes. I mean, you could really cut the fear with a knife on the ferry and in the waiting area. People hadn't seen that before, right? 250 black men and boys not at a sporting event. Where do you see that? In Seattle. And so, yeah, it was an amazing event, and we're going to continue to do it. We did the same thing with the women, but it was a different experience. Obviously, I wasn't a part of that because it was Women's Weekend, but it was really more intergenerational, where we had the grandmother, the mother, and the daughter there at the African American Females Weekend. But yeah, it all starts with trust. You have to have a trusted ambassador, somebody that folks trust, to be able to put something like that together.
Plus, you bring up something I think real interesting, and I'll get back to you in a second here, Omari. And I think we've been talking about this in the past hour strongly. I mean, we know about it in the sake of COVID, the fact that we have all these disparities in our society. And this only brings it up even that much more. That it's, why would people be concerned that, you know, African American parents bring their 200 kids onto a ferry to do that? You know, these are the things, folks, that we need to move beyond. It's 2020. And I think right now, with where we are in this country, with generational changes, this is where we have to make that shift. And we have that opportunity to do it and to try to all work together. It's a hard thing.
Yes. Yeah, most certainly, you know, but to your point earlier, Enrique, I was waiting in the waiting room and I heard you. And I know that a lot of people have talked about the resources and the things we need, but you know what? So it's a both and situation for me. I most certainly continue to advocate for more resources to our community to address this generational harm and trauma that we have experienced as a community. But I also want to tap into the resiliency that we have as Black people. And we've always been able to circle the wagons and build a village, right? And so with this event, you know, I just had people come volunteer, and I said, we need you. We need you. You know, is anybody getting paid? No, nobody got paid. We didn't have any, you know, everybody there was a volunteer, you know, and I don't get paid from this organization. Fortunately, I do have a different job that I can work at, but the point is that we have, you know, while we continue to talk about this deficit of resources in our community, we have the greatest resource ever. We have motivated people that love us. And if you love us and you really want to be involved, we can put it together, and kids can smell that. They know if you love us, right? So yes, on the one hand, we want to continue to fight for those resources, give us what we deserve so we can build community. But then two, you know, we got to get out here and do what we can. Right? Every school, like obviously within COVID right now is different, but every school is looking for a monitor to be on the playground. Every school is looking for an adult Black male to just come in and spend some time in the library. Like, these are things that we do not need any grant to do. We don't need no resources to do. You know, we pop bottles, we go to Vegas, you know, and what I tell people all the time is, you know what? Take 1-2 hours of PTO and go visit a school.
Yeah. The word is humanity. Yeah.
Humanity and love.
Yeah.
There it is. Kun, you know, so I'm calling you my older brother because I'm waiting for you to call me.
Wait a minute. I don't want to feel like I'm lost here. Yeah, here we go.
I'm calling you my older brother.
Let's not lose all our
brother.
Oh, yeah.
Good looking brother.
There you go. Good looking brother. Got it out of you. Kun, thanks for joining us. We're going to take a short break right now. When we come back, we're bringing Dre Franklin back as well as T. Florence Moreland. You're watching Community Voices.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.
All right, welcome back. And yeah, thank you for everybody who supports Converge Media. We definitely operate off of donations, so thank you for donating. We're back right here. Before we go into the second hour, we're trying to drill down solutions. I know some in this previous hour, a lot of people talked about solutions in a broader sense. We're going to drill it down in the second hour. But before we go there was a question that I'd thrown out to some of the panelists, and where it was tell us about a failure and a success. And, Dre got back to us in a real emotional sense. And he talked about the story of Stephen Stewart, who was murdered out there in the South End, and talked about how, early on in Stephen's life, Dre was working with him. And I'll let you guys tell the story more here. And, early on in his younger years. And then, when he turned 17, right, he was murdered and killed out in the South End. And so we have T, who's Stephen's mom here, and we have Dre. And Dre, I kind of want to turn it over to you first so you can kind of set the framework here. And then we also want to allow T to tell us a bit about her son.
All right, I'll try to frame it. Give me some grace. It's a lot. So I lost my brother in 2004. I started running this program down at Rainier Community Center in 2005. After being involved with some elders, Larry Evan and Aaron Counts, really taking me under their wing. And, I really made a decision to go left or go right. And, going right was working with young kids. So I had a program down at Rainier Community Center. I wasn't an employee of the city. I was an employee of a nonprofit. And this young man was 9 years old. I was running a teen program, after school program. It was a wraparound program called Square One. And Stephen was 9 years old. He was going to get kicked out of childcare, and they were trying to kick him out of the center. And I was like, well, let him come in, to this program. I know it's a little older, a little advanced for him, but let him come over here. He can get some mentorship, and he can be part of the program. There's some older kids in there that can kind of help set some of those guards. We had intergenerational mentoring going on with that situation. So that was 2005. And as I advanced through my career, and this is part of why I say programs don't change people, people change people, because I left the foundation and the formula for the program, and even offered to mentor folks to run the program, but the program was never the same after I left, right? Because the passion wasn't necessarily there. It was my vision, right? So as I matured through my career, I left Rainier Community Center, but I continued to do other things. And even, for a while, I wasn't even working with kids. I was painting for the city of Seattle. But I continued to have ongoing relationship with Stephen, throughout his early adulthood. And, was able to leverage the relationship, the real sustainable relationship that I have with him to help him make better decisions and navigate situations. There was a situation in 2016. I was doing an event, a community event, and he and somebody he was having some issues with both wanted to attend the event. So I was able to pull them together separately and facilitate and mediate a situation where they were both ultimately able to come to the event and coexist in that space. But so that's why I say that's a real success story, to be able to stay engaged with somebody for that many years. But ultimately, the failure, I feel like a failure. And a lot of people tell me I shouldn't take this burden on, but I really feel like it's a failure, because I feel like when we lose young folks, just like when I lost my brother, we're losing so much talent, we're losing so much leadership, we're losing so much opportunity, within our community. So in 2017, he ultimately succumbed to gun violence. He got murdered in 2017. So I always feel like there's more I could have done. Other ways I could have engaged, to help him make better decisions in that situation. So in a nutshell, I look at, Stephen as a great success story of, how this worked. It's really about the relationship and being intentional and keeping the relationship going. But I also feel like, I failed, him and only him. Like I knew his dad, I knew his mom. So I feel like, I let the community down. So that, that's the real trauma that I kind of talk about. Like this work is like, it's a lot,
T, tell us about your son.
Stephen was loving, he was giving, he was funny, he was a character, a lot of energy, he was a supporter. He was so many things. He was loved by so many. And he's a mama's boy.
Right. Around this discussion right now that's occurring, what are some of the things that you would like to see change that that might ensure that other young people don't meet the fate that your son met?
We need more support on the streets when it comes to this young generation. I am very lost and confused with this young generation that they feel that it's normal to go to a funeral every day. I want to change this generation's mind that it's okay to speak up. I've noticed that a lot of people know what happened to my son, but nobody's willing to step up and say something. And I think that has to do with the distrust with the Seattle Police Department. They are showing more loyalty to the enemy than they are to the one they call their brother, their best friend, their cousin, or whatever they want to call themselves. They make these truths and these pacts, but it's going on. It's past 3 years that I've laid my baby to rest, and people still know who did this to my child, and nobody's speaking up and they're saying anything. We need more big mamas. We need more daddies. We need more mothers. We need more cousins. It does take a village to raise a child, and we need more support on the streets. I want to stress to Dre that he made a promise to my child that he would always be there. If he had nothing else, he had his word. If Dre could not offer my son nothing else, he offered his word. He offered his time. He offered his dedication. A lot of people out here are promising you things, but they're not holding up to those. They'll do it for a minute or two, and then they'll walk away. Dre has been there for Stefan's graduations, has been there for his football games. He has been there to support him when he was hungry, when he was confused, when he was hurting, when he was just going through transitions from being a young man to a man. He has been there. It's about the promise. It's about the relationship. Like, I've raised my son to tell him that you have to be a man in your work. At the end of the day, that may be all you have. You may not be able to feed a person. You may not be able to give them a place to sleep. You may not be able to offer them a ride home, but you being a man of your word to say, this is what I'll do, and stick with it. So Dre, I don't never want you to feel like you failed, at least when it comes to Stefan, because you kept a promise to him that a lot of them didn't. Wow. I mean, what more could you do besides be there, besides love him, besides support him, besides encourage him and keep your promises? You told him on his 8th grade graduation that you was going to be there, and you was there. Shocked me. I was like, hey, you here, you know? Until this day, we are still friends. We still communicate. We still reach out. You'll always call me or text me, hey, I saw Stephen. What you guys do? We hung out, we kicked it, we ate. You know what I'm saying? And so I don't never want you to feel like you failed, because to me, you did not. You kept your promise to my baby. Man, and that's important to me. A relationship. You built a relationship and you stuck with it. There's so many people that talk a good game, but they can't walk in the shoes. So you keep your shoes laced up and you keep walking.
It's good advice right there. T, thank you so much for sharing. And man, when I talked to Dre a few times today, we were trying to put this segment together and be able to fit it in here. And I know that these words that you just said to him are very impactful, and I want to thank you for sharing with us. We're going to take a short break now. When we come back, I'm joined by Enrique. Let me bring Enrique on. We got Prophetic on Enrique. Powerful right there, Greg.
Yeah, it's a lot, and that's what I'm like. Ain't no overtime, ain't no comp time, ain't none of that. No extra benefits. It's just on the love, and that's yeah, it's my guy. I heard what she said, and I appreciate it, but I also got a 12-year-old son. Andre Jr. Like I'm grooming these young cats to look out for my son. You know what I mean? So I want to make sure that we're grooming the next generation of leaders. So my son don't got to deal with what I've dealt with and what they've dealt with, and so on and so forth. So that's ultimately the work is nonstop.
Right. All right. We're going to pop in Enrique. I think we got Enrique back over here, and we're going to go into our last hour over here. And we really want to pose some tough questions as to specifics. We want to be able to get a level of accountability here across community. And well, we got static from Enrique. So we have to figure out something's going on with your mic, Enrique. Go check that out. But we want to be able to really ask some tough questions here. And while Enrique figures out his mic, I might just jump into it. But in this hour, we've got our current panel, but we're also joined again by Davida Briscoe, who joined us in the first hour, and also Devon Adams, who's a community, who's over at Community Justice. And when we talked about this before, what we talked to the panelists about was like this hour right here is exact next steps, because people who are sitting at home taking notes, what are some of the exact next steps? And then what are some of the things that could be helpful? Let's check in with Enrique again real quick, see if we got him. All right. I can, yeah, we can see there's no static, but we can't hear you, Enrique. So it's always good to be able to hear you. All right. Don't worry about it. We're going to let you work on your sound over there. And we don't be acting like grandpa, man. But let's jump right into it, actually. And we'll circle right back around here when Enrique's sound is reconnected. Is that you? Are you on now?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, Enrique's back. All right. There we go.
Thank you.
No, yeah. That's what they call me over here, though. So I'm kind of making a choice. All y'all director would say, they be like,
why? Because you got that gray in your beard.
Man, you see what hey, believe it or not, my beard was black before the protest, man. I believe it. This is Western Barricade special right here, man. This is the chop.
I just got to say something. That last segment,
right?
Dre and
T. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was real. That was human. I wish everybody in Seattle could hear that to understand not only her pain, but also what Dre's doing. And I think also this conversation, I think, is so important tonight because, although we're talking about what's happening in South Seattle, this is a citywide thing. People need to care about, people had a heart attack and a hernia when there was the shooting in downtown Seattle, but come on, folks, this happens in other communities. And the fact is that we need to care about every part of our city. And that's a reality. And that's what we seem to be struggling with so much in this country today, about we only worry about our area. And if it's not in our backyard, we're not going to worry about it. But we need to think about the fact that we're losing a lot of wonderful young African-American men and brown men as well, unfortunately. And we can't let this go on. We all need to take a stand and do something about it.
I agree. So this is both me and you in on the questioning in this hour, but I'll put age before looks, and so I'll let you ask the first question of our panelists here, and this is more towards exact next steps. Like, man, somebody today, you know what I'm saying? They want to work on this problem, or what is it today? Well, not today, but you know what I'm saying? What can people be doing right now? What are some solutions right now? So the floor is yours. First question is yours, Enrique.
Well, it's that question. What would you say to other people outside of the South End about what they could do to make a difference with this issue, because we all have to take some ownership. I mean, we do. We have to care about what's happening in that part of the city, no matter where you live. If you live on Capitol Hill, you live in Ballard, you live in, Magnolia or wherever. What can we do to get others to say there's an issue there? We need to take, we need to put a focus here, and maybe I need to be doing something to make a difference. What would you say to those other folks in the community?
Yeah, I agree.
I direct that to anybody that wants to pick up on it.
Well, yeah, it's difficult for them to do it like that. You got to select a person, the system that we have.
Well, who's all with us again? I'm sorry.
So let me tell you. You've got. All right. So you got Dre Franklin.
Let me go to Rico, because
there you go.
With us, Rico.
Rico's there.
See, Rico and I go way back. We're the oldsters here. Yeah. Although he's got to turn his mic on, right?
The beautiful thing about that is we're still doing the work.
There we go.
That's the beautiful thing. And I think the institutional knowledge and the wisdom that that folks with 30 or 40 years of experience bring to really lift up a young brother like Dre. I'm working with him on a project right now. He's developed an organization called BRIC and a program called B.U.I.L.D. And so my time had occurred. I had my time in the light. My joy right now is the second life I have is uplifting a brother like that, or having mentored for a year and a half Dominique Davis, or having mentored Isaiah Anderson, or seeing a brother like Omari come up and rise up and do his thing. And I think what we have to do now is lift not just young people upstream, but leaders, and support them and gather with them and give them the support and surround them with the love they need to continue to do this work. Because it's very critical that a brother like that understands that we love him and that he is doing the right thing and he's staying in the game. And I'm glad to see that Dom is taking a vacation, because he needs that. So those are the things that are critically important, I believe. And then looking at not finding the enemy within. So a lot of people say, well, where are the leaders? Well, the leaders are doing things, but sometimes we have to work in a different way. My energy is different now. So I have to provide support and adornment and adoration for those who are out there in the traffic, right? I don't get in the traffic anymore. I direct upstream, or I direct leaders to safely keep young people out of traffic, but really watching their life cycle and what's going on with them. Because it's very important to me that we keep them moving. Police officers, again, they get support when they have a trauma like that happens in their life. But other folks doing this work, we don't have a system, a union, a infrastructure to support that. Another thing that I think would be very helpful is really looking at young people at a very early age. They need a therapy, and they need therapeutic services in the family dynamic to help them deal with and determine good decision making at an early age. That's very important. I was blessed to have someone like that in my life, but it wasn't my father, and it wasn't my stepfather. It was an uncle, and then it became a cousin, and then became a coach. And so those people are critically important. And I imagine that each of you have somebody like that in your lives that provided that for you as well. So those are a few good tips.
Very good tips as well. I think we need to, the mental health aspect of this is critical. And we need to break down whatever stigmas there may be there, because they do exist.
Yes.
I've had a long-term battle, although I've been pretty good for quite a while now, with depression. And it's pervasive in our communities of color, but one of the big challenges is getting folks to just realize that we got to address it, and to not feel like it's not a weakness.
Absolutely,
it's an illness.
Right. And my next question I've got here is for Sean Goode. But speaking of mental illness, I want to go ahead and play this clip right here. This was a 13-year-old in Burien who just, it was a random act of violence where he just shot a stranger and killed the stranger. And it was just like, man, he said he was feeling depressed. Wanted to play this clip right here, and then we're going to throw this over to Sean Goode. And when you talk about resources and community and mental health.
Investigators believe a 35-year-old man, Hassan Ali Hassan, was shot in the back of the head and left to die just after 9 p.m. on April 21st. A 9mm shell casing found near his body.
The call was they heard a gunshot and they saw somebody laying on the ground.
According to court documents, the 13-year-old boy suspected of pulling the trigger left the scene and went to a friend's house, showing the pistol in order to be let inside. That friend telling investigators the teen took off when he heard sirens. King County major crimes investigators were able to use surveillance video to track the teen from the transit center all the way to the crime scene. He was arrested Friday, 3 days after the shooting, walking on the side of the road. Investigators claim the boy admitted to shooting the victim, telling detectives he was depressed, adding he just felt like doing it.
It's really sad when you think about it, just the entire picture. I mean, somebody's life was taken, a 35-year-old male, and then the fact that a suspect is 13 years old, it's very tragic.
A woman at the home where the teen was living was questioned by police, told them her 9mm pistol was missing from the home.
But everything that we know so far does not appear that they know each other.
We're not naming that 13-year-old boy because of his age. He's currently being held at a juvenile facility in King County, and just this afternoon, a judge found enough probable cause to hold him on murder. In Burien, Sebastian Robertson, King 5 News.
All right, it was actually that story right there. I remember I called Willard Jimerson. I talk to Willard all the time. I see something on the news, and I called Willard. I was like 13, depressed. Sean, let's talk about, man, this mental illness and being able to, I guess, get away, one, from the stigma, but two, like this story right here, this 13 years old.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the same age that my brother got sent up until he was a 21-year-old man for a similar situation. That young man in particular, he was a part of our programming in schools at Sylvester Middle School. And then he got moved to a school where we weren't serving, so we weren't able to continue to support him in the capacity that we had. And then prior to that incident, he had also been referred to our organization through our partnership with the prosecuting attorney's office, but we weren't able to track him down because he had moved from his residence and moved in with his the mother of his girlfriend. Oh, that one hurts, bro. Because there's just so much hit to home and to the cause. What I'll say is that young people and their behavior is always telling us something. Too often we criminalize that behavior before we take the chance to listen to it. We criminalize it with suspensions and expulsions. We criminalize it with incarceration. And we get to the point where we're not actually listening to what that young person is saying through their behavior. And what the quote that the news didn't capture, the other part of the quote, was the young man said, I was either going to kill myself or kill someone else. He was going to take his life or someone else's life. And so often our young people are out in community committing these horrific acts as a result of a desire to end their life and not having any value of like their own breathing and existence. And mental health is so core to the catalysts that create these types of actions by young people, and they don't know how to diagnose themselves. And then there's not culturally competent people who are doing the work to be able to support them in understanding what's actually happening. And because they're Black and brown, very rarely do people point to mental health. They point to their behavioral issues, so we need to get them out of the space. But a white kid demonstrating similar behavior would get chance after chance, therapeutic support after therapeutic support, and the opportunity to be seen as a possibility and not a problem. But man, this young person from early on was stigmatized as being problematic and never got a chance to fully live into who they could be. And I hope that the redemption story is just beginning for him, as his journey is not over yet.
I had no idea. Just so you know, I had no idea that you had any connection with that clip. And actually, Willard, that question was initially for Willard, but he had fell off. His link was off. And so I shot it over to you. So, yeah. Wow. I wanted to throw another question out here, and I wanted to throw a question towards Devon. Devon, what we see what we see a lot as far as what's out there in the streets is retaliation as well. And there's retaliation. And somebody shoots somebody else shoots somebody, and these things spiral there. I know that community justice, a lot of what you guys do is being able to break these cycles around retaliation and be able to build bonds back in community and build bonds even between victims and family. What you're seeing right now here in Seattle, what are some of these steps? What needs to happen? You know, how do we, man, bring it down?
Okay, first, I just want to thank you all for having me, and take a moment to acknowledge the mothers that were speaking earlier. Just wanted to send my condolences personally, and as an organization. You know, I want to be real transparent. You know, I'm someone who has caused harm. I took a man's life about 20 years ago, and I'm finishing up a sentence. And so when you talk about trauma, you talk about depression, and we talk about retaliation, you know, there's a lot of things that are going on in the community, and I've been separated from that community. But in prison, I've had the opportunity to experience brothers coming together after dealing with conflict in the street and finding creative ways to make amends and begin to build community within prison. I was fortunate enough to be a part of the Black Prisoners Caucus and the Concerned Lifers organization. Davita had mentioned Mary Flowers and Janet Preston. These were two women who came into the community in there and helped us, you know, immensely in our healing process. And we were fortunate enough to meet some women, Martina and Catherine Beckett, in those organizations that came in and wanted to talk about restorative justice. And as an organization, we wanted to talk about restorative justice also. And we saw the benefit of healing and being able to address trauma, the things that had led us to the point where we could harm someone, and then at the same time want to be accountable to the community, to the people that we had harmed. And so going through that process, I was fortunate enough to really see the value of the healing work and how that was a really beneficial way of addressing conflict. And so now in my process of transition, I was lucky enough to be brought on board with Collective Justice, which is a restorative justice and transformative justice organization that's looking for alternative ways to deal with conflict. And Willard had stated earlier that these things are preventable. Gun wounds are preventable. Gunshots are preventable. And so what we would like to do is find ways to address the issues before they actually start. So if you can identify conflicts that is taking place, being able to have a facilitation team that works with a person who has been harmed and someone who has caused harm, and finding ways to help them process the experience that they've had and bring them together and have healing and accountability. We're in the process now of building a dialogue and accountability program, and that's what I'm headed up to do. And so we see this as something that's a component that's added on to the work that the folks at Choose 180, Community Passageways, and Zero Youth Detention are already heading up.
Enrique?
Yeah, I wanted to ask actually Willard, you know, the idea of restorative justice, you know, are young people open to that in the work that he does? Do you hear that they are willing to kind of take that path and take a look at themselves, really?
Yeah, I definitely want to answer that question, but I definitely want to be, you know, just as truthful and just as authentic around this aspect or this question that's being asked, by just also once again honoring, you know, the mothers who have to, you know, deal with the aftermath, and even long before that, they've been dealing with a lot of different issues as well, and also to the families and to the communities. And I want to once again thank Converge Media, Omari, and even you, Enrique, for bringing a robust aspect around these things. And so we've heard from a lot of different angles, and all of those angles are very much relevant. But just to provide an answer to your question, I want to take the opportunity to raise up one of the young men by the name of Adrian, who we lost, you know, earlier this year. This young man, very sharp, full of so much hope and potential, and we was working with him through a diversion as well. And we had an opportunity to work with him like twice, right? The first time he wasn't really as open, to a lot of the information. Then we got a second round chance to work with this young man. And I want to read to you guys something that he actually stated to bring in a voice of another aspect that needs to be shared and heard. He said to me, I'm definitely looking forward. I'm being a huge member in the community. I'm being bigger and better things, inshallah, which means God willing, big bro. I'm trying to switch things and at the same time get my funds up while this lifestyle is not for me no more. I don't want to deal with it no more. I'm trying to set an example for all the little homies looking up to me. Those jobs you were showing me, hopefully one day I will get an opportunity to work at those kind of jobs as well. And I had a great time learning new things every time I come to group. I'm looking forward to the next meeting. Unfortunately, he didn't make it to the next meeting. He will be forever 16 years of age. Was shot in the head just in March right here in South Seattle. And so when you ask the question, are these young folks open and willing to take on the opportunity? Yes, they are. They are looking for an opportunity. These young people want to live, and we need to do everything we can in our energy, our investment, our collective genius, our collective effort to present opportunities that prevent them from early demise. So these young folks are definitely, they want to be saved, they want to be helped, they want to be loved. And when you hear a gunshot, that is the most exaggerated form of an outcry that says, I need help. Something has went so awry in my life that this is the last version that I can use to exemplify and exaggerate to the fullest extent to tell the people that out there, I need help. I need your love. I need your support. And even raising up, my brother, Devin Adams, who I've been knowing since we were juveniles, going in and out of YDC, King County Youth Detention Center, as we were juveniles, and then doing 20 plus years together on the inside. One of the things we not only that, just talking about the love and the support that is needed, man, it made my heart, to be honest with you, I'm just thinking about Aiden and the support that these young people need and the collective love and support. It's hurting me a little bit at this moment, but just to respond to what you said, Enrique, yes, they are definitely, they want support. They want love. They're looking for it. They reach out to me all the time. There's plenty of times I've had to do mediations, where they're asking for support. They're asking for somebody to intervene. They're asking for someone to look at their humanity. They're asking for an opportunity. They're asking for resources. And the reality is they don't feel safe with the current system, with the current structure that is out there. Every system they came up against has denied them access to equitable opportunity, and we can no longer continue to do that because it's sending these young folks to an early grave, and we can prevent those things from happening.
Wow.
Very powerful.
Very powerful.
Powerful. I wanted to move over to Vita Briscoe and Briscoe, but before I do that, and this was a clip. This was from our very first episode of Good Game Alert, and this was Willard and Leonte. And Leonte is a success story that a lot of people in this community know. But Willard asked the question about, is there a lack of caring adults? And, we heard Davita say in the first hour that, she's one of those parents that's on top of everything. But let's listen to Leonte's experience.
For me, how I'm internalizing is that there's not enough of caring adults around young folks.
No, because I swear, I don't care what nobody says. All this stuff starts inside the home. All of it starts from your family. There's always somebody that's impacting you negatively. And then telling you, yeah, do this. Now, this is how you're supposed to be. I'm about to do this, showing you. There's never nobody showing you, oh, you should do this. And someone might tell you that, like, oh, you should get good grades, but no one's trying to help you do your homework or anything like that. They're exposing you to all this stuff and then expecting you to do good. And how am I going to do good if you're not showing me? I'm a little kid, you're not showing me. So what else am I supposed to know?
So let me bring in Davita right here. And, clearly one of the things you've talked to is parent involvement. And sometimes a lot of our kids, the direct parent might not be there, and, they're experiencing a lot of different things. But, man, talk to the importance of parents who are there being on top of it, but also extended community and community being involved in raising our children collectively.
Yeah, I think it's very important to even have like the Willard Jimersons and the Doms. I wish, because right now, especially in the Black community, most Black households are headed by single mothers. So we don't have a lot of positive male role models in our sons' lives and in our daughters' lives. And and Leonte is exactly right. I mean, especially if we got generational incarceration, in our family. So my son's father, biological father, was sentenced to life in prison, and if, we historically, if people in our families are in and out of prisons and we have absent fathers or we have absent mothers, there is a need for the community to step in and to help parent, like that whole village idea. I mean, it's hard. Leonte is so right. I mean, the first person who gave me my first sack of dope was not some stranger. It was my own family members. It was my own family members who taught me the streets. It was my own family members who taught me the game. It was my own family members who put a gun on me and taught me certain things. So everything I learned about the streets, I learned from people who were closest to me. So I say they're the ones who infected me, and we're infecting each other with the same and we're passing it on to each other. So there's no one to help young people to filter that information for them to see that what we're calling wrong things, we're calling right. What we say is right, we call them wrong. So, he's exactly right. I mean, I don't disagree with him. And, you do have some parents that are doing everything that they can. All these kids are not coming from bad homes where there's crack addiction and poverty, and some of these kids are coming from very, very good homes with parents who make $100,000 a year, but they still become victim to the wrong information that's being passed on to them from people who are closest to them because they trust them. So I would definitely have to emphasize, I wish beyond anything that I looked everywhere to get somebody for my son when he was struggling. When my son started struggling in the 8th grade, he was 14. Kids in the neighborhood started beating him up. He didn't want to be a gang member. He didn't want to fight. He didn't want to do anything, but they were harassing him and telling him to choose a side. So eventually he went to the gangs for safety. So I started calling the schools. I started calling the police. I started calling the libraries, the Boys and Girls Clubs, Safe Streets. I called every single program I could think of to get my son some help. And on the east side of Tacoma at that time, there wasn't even a community center. There wasn't a library. There wasn't anything in that area. The resources for kids were zero to nothing. And even when I called the schools, they said they couldn't protect them because the incidents were happening too far away from the school. The police said they couldn't help them because they didn't have enough. It was one excuse after another. But having the community to be able to step in, he had one mentor that was hired by Safe Streets, and that man had a strong influence on my son. And 4 months they ended up pulling his funding, pulling his program, and 4 months after, my son was dead. And I had to call that man and ask him to come to my son's funeral to speak. I put him on program because he had such an impact on my son's life. But I wish he would have been able to continue to keep working with my son. But they pulled his program and he lost his funding and he wasn't able to. But he had such a so that one-to-one peer mentoring and other men, positive male role models pouring into the lives of our young people are so important. And our young people knowing that somebody cares for them, that somebody's willing to come to the block with them and willing to put their lives on the line for them, that means a lot to those kids. It means a whole lot to them. So I would have to say that it's very key. I promise you, I wish there was a Dom and a Willard around when my son was struggling. And I was begging for those type of people to come and take my son, come, because I'm just a mom. I'm trying to tell him, don't go to the hood meeting, don't go do this, don't go do that. But anyway, so yeah, I think it's, the having the village and having the peer mentors and to be able to pour into our sons' lives, our kids' lives is very, very important.
Right on. Thank you.
Hey, Omari, you have a son.
Yeah.
What have you done to keep him safe?
Man, this is a tough one. Well, I mean, it's tough and not, but I mean, I had a different kind of experience too. When my son was young, I was living. I spent half of my career over in East Africa and the Middle East, and so when my son was 3 years old, he was over in Tanzania and in Kenya and Uganda, and then we lived in Abu Dhabi for like 3-4 years and everything else. So I mean, his perspective, I could say perspective was just different. Like he never had the perspective that a lot of our young people have. You know what I'm saying? His viewpoint was always very much well beyond the neighborhood. I mean, it's the same experience I had generationally. When I was growing up, I grew up right there on 29th and Jackson when it was going down. This is during weed and seed, police jumping out in Astro vans, Polaroid pictures, everything. You know what I'm saying? And my mom, right through 29th and Jackson, she got me National Geographic, and I'd read these National Geographics, and she said, man, that, don't let this neighborhood that we live in define, where the places that you can go, in this world. And it's crazy because now I've been to like 60 countries, and you blame it on my mom and National Geographic, but it's a generational thing. I grew up reading these magazines, and then when I had my son, all my kids, they traveled with me around the world, and I think that perspective kept them away from a lot of things that that other people are caught up in. But at the same time, it's real. Like I mean, when they were here, when he was here, he's back in Chicago now. He liked to walk around the CD, and I don't never want to scare my son. But, Tyrone Love's always in the back of my mind. You know what I'm saying? Abel is in the back of my mind. People just, I mean, it could be random acts of violence. It could be whatever. And I would tell him, and try not to seem scared telling him, but I'd be like, man, just call it, but an Uber, get anything. You know what I'm saying? Don't walk. It's a bad feeling to have to tell your son, like, don't walk through the neighborhood that you love and everything else. So, you can raise your kids in Abu Dhabi or Tanzania or whatever. But when you live right here in the neighborhood, you're going to, move around with the rules of the neighborhood. So, it's real interesting. Thankful for me, he's in school right now. He's in Loyola in Chicago studying broadcasting. He's actually the producer for Willard's show. You know what I'm saying? So if you like Good Game Alert, you give a big shout out to my son. Oh,
good for him. Yeah. Yeah. Well, sometimes I think it's environment. And unfortunately, for some, that environment is not always the healthiest. So we got work to do. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. I have a question. I don't know is the chief still with us?
The chief's there. The chief said he's here to the end. He's there.
All right. I like that. Good, chief. Hey, I'm curious. The one thing that we haven't talked about here, we're talking about gun violence. Where are the guns? Where are they coming from? How are they getting them?
The guns are happening in a variety of different ways. There are some guns that are being, stolen in car prowls and burglaries. We also have gun shops that are what we call straw purchases, where guns are being purchased by somebody that can legally purchase it, and then that person then sells it off or figures out ways to move it out into the in various areas. And so we 1 year had done a kind of an identity of how many guns were stolen in a year up around the I-5 line from northern up from the border to Portland. And there was about 5,000 guns. And so, we know that there are guns that are out and about. We've had also pawn shops that have, been broken into and multiple guns taken from that, gun shops that same way. So we do know that there are just a lot of guns that have made its way onto the streets. and that have been used in a variety of different crimes. What I can also acknowledge is that we have over a couple hundred guns that have been used in multiple crimes just this year alone, because we test every shell casing that we recover. We test it to see if that gun has been used in multiple shootings, and we know that over 200 have been used in multiple shootings throughout the region. So a gun that has been tested in Seattle can be tested in Tacoma, or shell casing can be tested in Tacoma, and we know where those linkages are.
So it seems like guns are still part of the issue, part of the problem, as well as all of the other things that we're facing these days.
Yeah, no, that's very clear. Guns are part of the issue, and this year alone we've recovered 820 guns off the streets. We're already surpassing about 6 years over the last 11 years of how many guns we recovered just this year alone. So, and we still have 2.5 months left. So we could find ourselves in the top 3 over the last 11 years of the amount of guns we've recovered. And so that just tells you just how many guns last year alone. We recovered over 1,200 guns just last year alone. And that doesn't include the amount of shell casings that are being used in many of these shootings.
Yeah. Wow. Omari.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. I wanted to get over here to the Rev, Martin Lawson. Let me bring in the Rev. There we go. Good. So Coach Dom, when we had him on here, when we was talking to Nikki Barron a few weeks ago, he talked about some of these different enterprising kind of programs. Where he talked about trying to build, financial literacy and gateways to finances. He talked about, opening a black bank and things like that. I mean, do you see that as a direct approach now? And when we talk about, man, what can we be doing? Because he said something. He said, man, if you'll put down a gun and pick up the plan, if you got a plan. So maybe you can talk more about what is it you guys are doing to give these young people a plan.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. First, I want to, give my condolences to Davida and to T and all the rest who have lost loved ones. These are. It's more than just gun violence. These are our sons, our daughters, our nieces, our nephews. They have names. These are our children. And so this is not just like Will said. It's a community health issue. It's a health issue. And what we're doing at Community Passageways is we're looking to rebuild the village. I think T mentioned that when she was talking about her son, Stephan, the village mentality. We're looking to rebuild the village. So like your brother Chukundi was taking these young men to experience something that they'd never experienced before. And then you had a bunch of men who went with them to support that effort. And not only supporting that effort, but they're also building relationship. And so what we're doing at Community Passageways, one of the things we're doing is we're tapping into the community. Is we're interacting with some of the OGs, man. Some of these cats that are getting out of prison after doing time for drugs and violence and whatnot, and then we're giving them a new focus where because like Will said, a lot of these guys don't want to do it. They're looking for another way out. Not only the ones that are currently in it, but the ones who are just coming out of incarceration. A lot of cats, if you talk to cats in incarceration, they'll be like, "Yo, man, if I could tell my past self something, I would tell them not do that or do something different." So now they're having an opportunity. We're trying to give them an opportunity where they can get paid to tell these young people from a firsthand experience to do something different. And they can walk alongside them. They can be a mentor. We're giving them training. They're becoming experts in this. So they're not just having a lived experience, but we're also providing training so that they can become experts and begin to speak the language from a clinical point of view and work with these young people to change their narrative. And so, like I said, we're looking to rebuild the village, and rebuilding the village starts with equipping the village members. And so, with COVID, they found money. They gave everybody in the nation money for COVID. And it's been said, if I can tell what you care about by where you spend your time and where you spend money. And at the highest levels of government, we need them to know that they need to start caring about our communities and start spending money in our communities, and not just their money, but this is our money. Like Dom says all the time, this is our money. We're paying these taxes, and we've been taxed since we got here. When we were drugged here, when we were enslaved, we've been paying taxes with our blood, sweat, and tears. Taxation without representation. And so now it's time for us not only to do two things. I'm going to echo what Kun Love said. He said, our community members, we got to get involved. Our parents got to get involved. The men have to get involved to be the perimeter and the protectors of our community, and not the destroyers. We have to be there for our children and for the children of others. We have to get involved. And then the second thing is we got to demand that these powers that be give us what we deserve. Taxation with representation, no more. Like King talks about, pay the fee. We need these monies to pay individuals in the community to do this work, because they are essential workers. And we just want to turn the tide. I think I'm going to say one thing again before I get off, because it's eating at my heart. I don't condone rioting and looting by no shape or form. I think it takes our cause backwards. But I understand the sentiment. And in fact, at the highest level of government, they understand the sentiment, because they look at the Boston Tea Party. What they did, they teach that, they celebrate that, because some people stood up against what feeling oppressed, and they acted. And now, as our young people are beginning to stand up, and some of them a lot of the ones rioting and looting aren't even our young people. But as they begin to stand up, they're not being recognized for the pain and the trauma that they're dealing with. They're being called thugs and all this other stuff. So highest level of government, our community, we got to know that it's time to rebuild this village. And by any means necessary, like Malcolm X, we got to make it happen.
All right. We have Dre Franklin back. Is Dre here? Let me bring. You got him all yet? So Dre, speaking along the lines here of economics as well, you got a unique situation over there at B.U.I.L.D, and maybe you can talk about this and its role. Like I said, Action Today, this program that you have, B.U.I.L.D, is actually taking people who come out of this environment and putting them in a commercial or business kind of situation. You actually have a quick commercial here that we'll play that B.U.I.L.D does. You got a lot going on there.
Yeah.
You're trying to make it happen.
One thing is a COVID protector, maybe.
Yeah. But the cleaning process between COVID would be bad, though. Like, to wipe the inside of them things down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Economic growth and development is huge in our community, and the lack of access to those resources is another thing. And so, what we've done is we use recreation as a tool to engage people, right? People are having fun. It breaks down those barriers to, open up to talk about other things and, help them navigate, right? But also, we use recreation as tools. We were doing so many events, but we're, asking institutions, can we borrow tables and chairs? Can we, we're having to rent stuff, so we're not really able to sustain. So over the years, we've made investments, strategic investments to start businesses. One, to bring in revenue, so we're not always dependent on asking people for things. We're able to sustain and have businesses. But also, as we have those businesses, we're able to give people hard and soft life skills. We're not able to, unfortunately, we don't have the resources to be like, hey, we're going to, pay somebody $40 an hour. A lot of our work is volunteer based, as Chukundi talked about. A lot of the work that's going on, the great work that's going on in the community is off the love for the community. But, when we do get, community is able to, rent stuff, or, we've been able to support the protest. And, earlier this summer, there was a lot of people having repasses for the violence that is going on in the community. So we were able to step up and support those types of events with those resources, but also being able to really give people those hard and soft life skills, have those conversations. How do you strap stuff down? How do you read the invoice? How do you interact with the customer? How do you be on time? Having those conversations. So people are learning those hard and soft transferable skills. And, I agree, like, we got to have economic mobility, to be able to sustain. Unfortunately, when we try to write funds in, hey, we want to go buy a box truck, or we want to invest in these types of things, and we try to ask for resources for that, we're not able to do that. So like I've been investing a lot of my resources, other people have been investing in the resource or donations that we get. We're able to make those investments because a lot of the funding is all about, it's not transformational. It's about, my guy Rico would say, it's not transformational. It's really about transactions. They want, they're going to give you X number of money and they want you to get this many people to graduate or get this many people into housing or whatever. So we end up, operating, in a capitalist system being very transactional.
That's good. Kind of got to do a chance for folks here to give us some final comments on things. Let me start with Sean Goode. Sean, I'd like to have you kind of, I guess your words to the public out there on this whole issue of how we are going to be able to get a hold of curbing the gun violence in the South End and in the city.
Yeah, well, if Black Lives Matter, let Black Lives lead. Go to KingCountyEquityNow.com. There is a Black-led research project going on right now that is going to every corner of our community and identifying what our community is determining the needs are and bringing those needs forward to be resourced through a participatory budgeting process. In this time more than any other time, it is clear that the people have the power. The collective protests from the evening marchers, the morning marchers, the everyday marchers. If you look at what happened with the No New Youth Jail movement, that they protested the building of the youth jail, and Dow Constantine now says that they're going to repurpose the jail by 2025. Our voices matter. Our voices are prophetic, and our voices can lead. And it is imperative that we don't sacrifice the synergy of our voice for the sake of some sort of token gifts in the short term, when the long-term gain can be so much better. So as people wonder what they can do, in our less than diverse community of King County and the greater Seattle area, here's my advice. As we are in this vehicle moving forward, let the people who are most impacted and marginalized steer and direct, and everybody else get behind and push. And as we push towards justice on this journey that we're on with one another, we will get there collectively to a place that's more just, a place where Black Lives Matter, Black Lives lead, and that Black lives get to determine what public safety looks like for them.
All right. Thank you very much. Davida, you got a final thought you want to leave us with?
Is Davida there? Oh, she's off stream right now. Let's circle back to Davida. Who you got
All
after
right.
Davida?
Is Rico still with us, or did he call it a night?
No, Rico's there. Rico OG. He been at it 30 years. He ain't gonna leave. He ain't gonna leave this early.
Come on, man.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
That's right. I think just to wrap up what I've heard, what I've learned is we have to engage in what's called a praxis intervention. And that's where the teacher leads, the teacher learns, and the student teaches. So there's a back and forth that happens in this that's very important. Like folks said earlier, listen to the voices of young people. That brother read something that one of his students had written. We've all been impacted by that. When I did work in Oakland, I went to 57 funerals in 1 year. And so I've gone through these experiences that these brothers are going through now. And so really lifting them, looking at what's happening in the home, transferring that support and surrogate fathers and surrogate parents and coaches and what have you. There's the shortage of that outside the home, and then really walking with them. So there's a program in the military that they have, and I sort of came up with this acronym called Walking with the Wounded, www. And that's what we have to do, because we're all wounded in some way, some more than others. But we have to really walk with each other through this pain and through this difficulty. And it's about reducing those risks, meeting the basic needs, and building competencies, because competencies will get you self-sufficiency. I don't depend on anybody else for my resources now, because, we have positioned ourselves to have our own resources and investments to care for ourselves.
All right. Thank you very much. Rev, is the Reverend still with us? Reverend Martin.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm glad I had the opportunity to come back and kind of tell us some of the work we were doing. I digressed a little bit, but over at Community Pathways, some of the things we're doing, one of the things we're doing is we're training and employing credible messengers from the neighborhoods to go back and be a voice to the young people who are still gang involved in a negative sense. We're also providing re-education spaces for young people with lived experience. So we have the deep dive program where we have these young men who might be still involved, but we expose them to new learnings. They actually went on a retreat a few weeks ago, man, about 20 of them, went river rafting and everything, just kind of like what Con Love did, just put them in a new environment and then begin to talk to them and teach them. And we had some of them that were involved with them pulled aside some youth that were talking about getting jumped in, and they just schooled them and said, this is not what you want to do. And they taught them. They took it upon themselves. So those are some of the things we're doing. We're building hubs for critical incident response. And then also these hubs, from these hubs will have case management aspects where we can point families and individuals into different resources. We're providing training for frontline community workers. We're building in parenting resources. We have de-escalation efforts. We have educational support. We have vocational resources and training for the young people and for our credible messengers. We're partnering with other organizations to get this work done. And we are advocating for sentencing alternatives. One of our success stories is we had a young man who was charged with a crime, but he was, while they were waiting for his sentencing, they were looking at whether they were going to put him in jail or can we get him to do something else. We were able to get him to go to college where he can play football while they're waiting for him to be sentenced. And odds are that his sentence will be either reduced or suspended because he's doing the right thing while he's waiting for that. So these are some of the things we're doing to combat this violence.
Great. Dre Franklin.
All right, I'm gonna try to keep this short and succinct. I know you want us to be on point. So I think we need to really change our social norms on what's cool and in our communities, and what's acceptable. We heard people talk about going to funerals. We know a lot of times we get more respect for coming out of jail than we do for going to college. And a lot of that is the social norms that's been given us through media. And that's why I think Converge is such a powerful tool to be able to have these types of conversations and drive and change the narrative, right? And that's really what B.U.I.L.D. and United Better Thinking and Community Passageways and Choose 180 and other great organizations that are out here are trying to do is really change the narrative for our community. We really got to be strategic. Like my son is 12 years old, going on 30. He's hitting that age where he's transitioning. But I was very intentional on making sure I don't listen and let him consume, rap music. We have TV without cable. So you're really being conscious about the intake of what we're allowing our kids to have. And he's still a 12-year-old. He's innocent. When I was 12-year-old, I was already in traffic. And so he's really innocent. So I think, Omari, you shared some stories around how your mom exposed you to things that got you thinking outside of, the neighborhood that you were in. I think that's really important. That work is important. If we're not able to give that to folks in home and build the family up, then we need to have resources to make sure that the community is able to step in what is lacking and support the family at the same time. We want to give people the resources and make it cool to do what's right. And I think that's what's going to offset gun violence. Because gun violence is really a lagging indicator. If we're talking about economics, like gun violence is a lagging indicator of all these other symptoms, all these other failures. The thing that we're seeing now is there's a huge uptick with everything that's going on. Like racism's been around since this country was developed, right? But this gun violence hasn't always been at the level it was. And part of it is the social norms, and we're dealing with a pandemic now. We've seen there's a lot of displacement. There's no community, so people are all over the place, as well as social media. I think social media plays a part in what's going on. When we were younger, we would go get into a fight or whatever, and if we lost, we can come back to the neighborhood and tell our story. Now it's live. It's instant. So like you can't really. People are embarrassed. You know what I'm saying? They don't really know how to navigate that. And there's not enough, like Rigo said, there's not enough guardrails to support. So that's what I think really needs to happen. We need to have support, trust, respect, and accountability, and build the foundation, and then everything else is going to work. Without the trust and respect and accountability within our community, nothing's really going to work. We're going to keep putting band-aids on symptoms instead of really addressing the issues upstream.
Right. Thank you, Chief Diaz.
Yeah. So I think that there are several themes that have come around just in this conversation, and I really appreciate being a part of this conversation. I can think of hope, the mentorship and the people that are willing to step up and guide young people into to hopefully making the right decisions and seeing that they can, strive to a better future. I think the other piece is resilience, and really trying to give people the resilience to deal with all of the trauma and all of the things that are going on in the world, and all of the issues that they see every single day. I think that's, really, we got to figure out how do we build those levels of resiliency. We have to be vulnerable. We have to have these types of conversations with everyone in the room that we might see differently on some things, but at least we're willing to sit down at the table, being vulnerable, and that's the only way we can grow. And I think that's one part. Another part is being present. I think that it doesn't matter where you live at in this, in the city or in around the Seattle area. We have to just be aware that this type of violence occurs, and it does occur in every community. But we have to make sure that we are aware that this occurs in all of our communities of color, in a community that there's some of these communities are affected at higher rates because of poverty, and we've got to figure out how do we support communities to be able to find those solutions. And I think the fifth thing that I really can grab around is that right now we have a country that is greatly divided, and if we expect our youth to not and our young adults to not be divided and not to shoot each other like we have as adults, we have to figure out ways that we come together and we can show that we can be united. We can't expect our youth to not feel like they a willingness to pick up a gun and use a gun because they feel disconnected with their community. So we have to figure out ways that we can come together as a united front and figuring out ways that we can all come together with safe solutions to make our community safe.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. Willard Jimerson. I'm sorry. I'm getting tired.
Okay, Grandpa.
Yeah, thank you. Abuelito to you. Go ahead.
You're on mute.
Are you on mute?
Mute.
That's okay.
There you go. No,
Not
we
yet.
can't hear you.
All right, there we go.
There you go.
There you go.
My apologies.
No problem.
I just want to start out, by echoing one of the Khmer proverbs that says that only a spider can repair a spider web. And so the work that we're doing with the regional approach method is doing exactly just that, bringing the experts into the operation room to be able to get the work done effectively. And what do we mean by that is when I even asked a council member just a few days ago, if you were in need of a serious surgery, would you want your mother performing that surgery? And the council member just intelligently said no. Just even though my mother loves me, the mother is not the expert. And so we got to have a great sense of understanding of who needs to be in the operation room and who also needs to be in the visiting room. And there's quite impact of importance on both aspects. So with the regional approach method, we are in the operation room. We are doing that work. And as someone who has served 20 and a half years from the age of 13 to 33 in the city of Seattle and was sentenced to serve that time, I am now back working as a program manager, community facilitator with zero youth detention, essentially working for the same system that sent me to prison in an effort to undo the harm that has been caused in a traditional format historically. So we have to do to pull the experts into the space. And I appreciate the fact that you brought even Devin Adams into this space, because like me and Omari was having a conversation just a few days ago, he said the unique position he has as being an interviewer is that he get a chance to listen to all sides. So therefore he's well informed. And my position is gave me a well-informed perspective because I am someone who also engaged in gun violence and unfortunately restructured somebody's family that I feel that impact every single day. So I bring that particular value into this space. I have so much aspect in terms of skin in the game in a literal sense. And so it's experts such as myself and others who are doing this work that need to be in the operation room. We are the spiders that needs to repair the spider web. There's opportunities and resources that need to be allocated. Once again, we are the closest to the problem. We are, therefore makes us the closest to the solution, but we're oftentimes furthest removed from the resources. And I'll close with the African proverb that says, if a child is not embraced by the village, it will burn it down just to feel its warmth.
Thank you. Yeah, powerful. Thank you very much. Well, I'd just like to say, Omari, thank you for putting this together. I think that it's important. I think that it's unfortunate that we have to do this, and this is an issue that's being covered. But I think it's critical for the community and for people to understand. And to all those that participated this evening, thanks for being present. Really appreciate that a lot.
Yeah. Can we bring everybody in real quick? Who you still have? Let's now it looks like these Zoom calls that all these people be at. See, now
it reminds me of an episode of the Brady Bunch,
right? If nobody had anything in common before this moment, we've all been on this kind of call, so we all have a commonality here. And for the people who are here on this screen, first let me start with you, for Rico Bembury, for Sean Goode, for the Rev. We appreciate you, Dre Franklin, Willard Jimerson, Chief Diaz. I mean, man, I want to thank all of you guys. Devin had popped off earlier, as well as Davida, as far as this section here. But, I mean, in everything that you're doing, whether it's policing or community, you guys are the experts. And you allowed people in Seattle to hear beyond who they usually listen to. I know you guys go, whether it's community meetings or even police functions, it's a certain group of people who are always listening. The challenge is to get people who don't usually hear you to hear you. And that's really what we wanted to do here tonight on this platform, is to give everybody an opportunity to be heard. It's a lot of people in the community who might not necessarily hear Chief Diaz. It's a lot of people in the white community who don't hear a Willard Jimerson. But, here tonight, we've got some of everybody, and I know this will be replayed a lot. So, what I'm saying? I want to say thank you to you guys for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Peace. All right. And now, Mr. Cerna. But before we get to your big vote, actually, you can keep that on, because I got a few more thank yous, and we'll talk about that. And I want to start up there at the top. Want to thank Alicia Dasa. Want to thank Donita Sinclair Martin. I want to thank Yona Sifu. For joining us, as well as for Davida. As well as for Devon Adams, and for everybody else. I mean, for me, won't take up too much time on this, but I mean, the best thing is what's the purpose? What's the purpose or the benefit of having a platform, no matter how big or small? We're the smallest platform in the city, my friend, and it takes a lot. We get over here trying to punch above our weight class, man. We're definitely the smallest guys out here, and I mean, I feel. Man, I'm thankful that we're able to pull something together where we've got all these experts here, and a chief of police, and somebody like an Enrique Cerna, on the Converge platform. I'm thankful to all of our guests. And most importantly, man, this is something that's near and dear to us here at Converge, to our community. Unfortunately, I've been writing, if you go back to the Garfield Messenger, when I was at Garfield, I was writing stories and articles about, my friends and colleagues who were killed when I was in high school at the Garfield Messenger. And here I am all these years later, and we're still talking about the same thing. So, my mama always says, do what you can with what you have. And what we have is this little platform called Converge. And man, we're going to continue to push it every day. Our community is worth it. Our young people is worth it. All of our guests who are there, man, platform is yours. Come talk to me anytime. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to give you everything that we got. everything that we got, man, these young people are worth it. And also, I want to tell you, these young people you come in touch with, you know, I got time for them. You know, they might be excited about learning how to podcast. They might be excited about learning TV. They might be excited about video production. You know, they might be excited about journalism. You got Enrique, you got Marcus, you know, so like, man, we're here. Got time for these young people. You know, I'm more than happy. Bring some of these young people down here to Converge. We'll make space for them with the resources that we have. And so I want to say thank you to that. And if you could bring my esteemed co-host back on screen. I see you saying vote there, Enrique. I know you got a few words.
Well, first of all, please vote. You know, make sure that you exercise. If you have the opportunity and the right and you're eligible, please vote. Please vote in this election. Any election. I think it's, we have an opportunity to make a difference and, do that. So please vote. But I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to join you tonight, Omari. And I think what you do with Converge is just so important. It is so important because you really are in the community and on the street, and you bring something to this community of the city of Seattle that is much needed, and that's hearing the voices that too often are ignored and marginalized. And so we need to make sure that those voices are going to be heard. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to joining you again sometime. Okay.
Right on. Thank you. And before I get out of here, a big thanks to our live director. Oh, yeah, she was back there, man, making it happen, messaging everybody. Our brother, Marcus Harrison Green, incredible staff here at Converge. And most importantly, I want to say thank you to our citizen stakeholders here in the Emerald City, and, a rest in power to all these young people that we've lost. You'll catch us again tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. for the Morning Update Show. Peace.
All right. Good night.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.